How's going guys, welcome to the channel. In this video we are gonna see, what if Naruto got harem with Supergirl, Wonderwomen and Poison Ivy? Part 2. If you wants to see awesome fanfiction like this, don't forget to subscribe. Now let's get into the video. You all thought you knew him. That golden god you celebrated, who loved you mortals enough to lay his own life down to protect you. Pretending he cared one iota about what happened to you, as he healed your sick, fed your hungry and protected your helpless in the name of justice. Never even once wondering that maybe, just maybe, there was something fundamentally wrong with him. You thought that because he saved you, day after day, that you understood him. Human arrogance, you don't even understand yourselves. How could you possibly believe yourselves capable of understanding a fundamental force of nature? He is a being born of violence, to live for the sake of violence. His charisma and beliefs were nothing more than his best attempts to delude himself into believing he could do anything in this life, other than bring death and destruction. All it took was for someone to snap him out of his delusions, and your golden god brought your whole world down around you. He was after all, only fulfilling his purpose as humanity's inevitable end. Unknown man in the near future. Metropolis Harbor, Metropolis. I am entropy. I am death. I am Darkseid. Naruto Uzumaki was shaking, it wasn't overtly visible, but he could feel himself shaking at the sheer malevolent presence emitted by the being floating before them. Darkseid had arrived, and he was hovering over the ocean, half a mile in front them with a fleet of thousands parademons at his back. In his relatively short but exciting life, Naruto had stood face to face and endured the killing intent of numerous powerful beings without ever so much as flinching. Beings that were capable of everything from leveling countries to ending worlds in seconds. Yet somehow he just knew that Darkseid was something beyond all of his past foes, a god in an altogether higher category than anything he had ever faced before. And quite frankly, it terrified him. The new god and lord of Apocalypse was not actively flaring his killing intent at anyone, like S-rank ninja, tailed beasts and even Kaguya had done in the past. No, it was merely his sheer overwhelming presence that stopped Naruto cold. A presence seeped in such evil, malice and cruelty that it froze Naruto where he stood, making it hard for him to breathe. Darkseid's presence and the sheer power Naruto could feel rolling off of him every second was, to understate it, simply astronomical. From the very beginning via some supernatural instinct, it was abundantly clear to Naruto Uzumaki that the inevitable outcome of fighting Darkseid directly would be his death. The only other time Naruto had ever come close to feeling like he wouldn't walk away from a battle was while fighting Kaguya on his own. What he currently felt in the presence of Darkseid was easily 1,000 times worse. Despite this, Naruto had no intention of backing down from this fight, not when so many lives depended on him and his fellow heroes winning. Thankfully he wasn't alone in this battle, 8 others heroes and warriors had stepped up to face this threat to humanity and the world they called home. Luckily his training as a ninja also meant that Naruto did not have to fight the powerful god directly, in fact, he was sure that his specialization in indirect and unconventional combat gave him a higher chance of survival. Furthermore, 6 months of war and some of the harshest training regimens 9 different Kages could beat into him had changed Naruto greatly. He had largely been weaned of his more childish strategies and ways of thinking, but the spark that had given him a penchant for doing the unexpected and the extremely creative was something that had instead been nurtured by the Kage. Madara at the time was the single most powerful being in the world, and Naruto and Sasuke could barely stop him. Just teaching them a myriad of new jutsu and skills was not going to cut it when they went up against the Kyuubi Jinchuriki's decades of experience. They needed something far more primal, something deeper and unique to the two teen ninjas in order to hold their own against their legendary foe. For Naruto it was his creativity, a creativity he intended to bring to this fight as soon as his chakra pathways healed. Taking a deep breath to calm his frayed nerves before exhaling, Naruto repeated the process 3 more times, slowly bringing himself to a more relaxed state while thinking. This is just another fight, all I need to do is be cautious and watch my allies' backs. I am not on my own this time. From what he could feel, his chakra pathways would take a bit more time before he could use them again. A serious disadvantage that was akin to normal civilian trying to fight a trained martial artist with both their hands tied behind their back. Still, it could have been worse. His body had after all been enhanced to the point that even in his normal state, it was like he was in sage mode. So he would use every skill he had picked up during the war to stall Darkseid and hope Superman and Wonder Woman could keep the evil god busy until he was back to full power. So, I'm guessing that that's the big bad Robokid was freaking out about. Green Lantern broke the silence as the assembled heroes watched Darkseid approach, his fleet of parademons following in perfect formation behind him. It was a truly enormous number of reinforcements that could quickly overrun the city if they weren't handled properly. Naruto hoped that the coming battle would keep them focused on the heroes. Lucky guess. Batman replied in the most sarcastic tone he could manage in their depressing situation. Superman seemed to pick up on the tone, snorting as he folded his arms and confidently said. He doesn't look so tough. But as if in mockery of the Kryptonian's words, a trio of F-35 multi-role combat fighter jets dove from the low-hanging clouds gathered above and descended towards the harbor. They quickly entered the bay with their weapons locked on Darkseid's massive form, and a second later they all unleashed their payload of missiles at the new god before flying past him. The thunderous shockwaves of multiple missiles successfully detonating across the god's face and body soon echoed through the bay. Unfortunately, despite the impressive explosions, the missiles had absolutely no effect on Darkseid or his clothes. Something that went a long way to showing the superheroes exactly what they were up against. The bank of smoke concealing the god's body from view parted as Darkseid continued flying forward towards the harbor at the same leisurely pace as before, revealing himself to be completely unharmed. Then tragedy followed as his eyes lit up like they were illuminated by some unholy hellish blaze. Twin beams of brilliant crimson energy shot forth from the dark god's eyes, zigzagging at right angles in a plethora of seemingly random direction, too fast for the unaugmented eye to follow save for the trail they left. The two beams suddenly veered backwards in an unpredictable pattern and began tracking the three F-35 fighter jets with ridiculous ease. To their credit, the pilots tried to bank and lose the deadly I-beams tracking them, hoping to break whatever lock they had on their aircrafts. Unfortunately, the godly eye lasers that put even Supermans to shame merely course-corrected, twisting and turning before separating and pursuing their targets independently. Before the pilots could even hope to react, the twin beams of destruction came in at unexpected angles and punched massive holes clean through each of the three fighter jets. A second later, the three military aircrafts blossomed into a trio of thunderous fiery explosions, leaving their scattered debris to fall into the sea without any survivors. It was over in seconds, and not once did Darkseid ever look back over his shoulders as he proceeded to the harbor unimpeded. No. Flash gasped in horror to Naruto's far left, the tragedy of what he had just witnessed getting to him. The others stood, equally horrified, but did not vocalize it, however, by the way they clenched their fists and their jaws tightened, their feelings on the matter were clearly visible. Even had that not been the case, Naruto easily picked up their horrified shock and grief through his negative emotion sensing. Meanwhile, the ninja in question couldn't help but clench his own fists hard enough to draw blood. He silently swore upon his nindo to make sure that the deaths that had occurred during this invasion would not be in vain. Taking a deep breath to calm himself, Naruto said to his comrades. Prepare yourselves for combat, guys. I won't be able to use my chakra for a little while longer, so don't expect anything fancy from me till I recover. Not that granite face over there looks to be the type to wait until his enemies recover. Contrary to Naruto's words, Darkseid came to a stop less than 20 feet away from them and just waited. Not even his parademon so much as twitched behind him. It should have been the moment that they exploited the hell out of, but Green Lantern got excited or perhaps impatient. Well, if you are no good to us, then stand back and peep the light show. Green Lantern's got this. The space cop loudly announced as his ring began to glow a brilliant emerald and he flew off to attack Darkseid. It was a colossal mistake. No, Lantern, wait. Naruto yelled in a vain attempt to stop his teammate, already knowing it was too late. Naruto found himself ironically praying to whatever god or higher being had brought him to this universe so that the brash idiot wouldn't die. Somehow, in the short time he had been working with these people, he had come to consider them his friends. Green Lantern formed a giant green spiked gauntlet and flew straight at Darkseid before slamming it in the new god's face. The impact shattered the construct and succeeded in turning Darkseid's head to the right. Naruto actually found himself surprised that Darkseid had even gotten hit by the lantern. The punch was completely telegraphed, and Naruto expected the new god to at least be fast enough to block the attack, if not outright dodge it. At the very least Kaguya would have, but then again, Kaguya was pretty unique and probably not the standard for all gods everywhere. What happened next, however, fell more in line with his expectations of a god. If he had blinked even for a second, Naruto would have missed it. So fast was the retaliation despite Darkseid's enormous eyes that it left no question as to the fact that the new god had allowed himself to be hit in the first place. Literally before Green Lantern could even begin to straighten from his overextended punch, Darkseid decided to punch him back, hard. The impact of the god's fist meeting the indestructible force field right above Green Lantern's face created a massive shockwave as the force field shattered and the space cop was accelerated backwards, like a rocket. Green Lantern slammed into and then through a lamppost before punching a hole into the side of a building and then caving in a wall further inside. It also seemed to be the signal for the parademons to attack, for they all simultaneously charged at the downed member of the Green Lantern Corps. Like a bolt of lightning, Flash took off to protect his injured friend, followed by Superman who scythed dozens of parademons out of the sky with his heat vision. Wonder Woman was right behind them, her arms aglow and wreathed in her newfound lightning powers, throwing enhanced punches and kicks that combined her incredible strength and the power of lightning together to blast parademons out of existence with each blow. Aquaman and Mera chased after the super-speeding trio, the Atlanteans, using their own slightly less impressive speed to cross the distance quickly. Mera's eyes shone a luminous sky blue as weapons of solid water formed from every water source nearby, the largest being the ocean, and shot towards the enemy forces, tearing parademons apart left and right. Meanwhile, Aquaman with his trident was a mix of bludgeoning, stabbing, punching, kicking and the occasional headbutt to anything in his path. His golden weapon flashing through the air, left, up, backwards, forwards, down and right, like an angry bumblebee. Besides Naruto, Victor Stone's arm turned into a white noise cannon, while on each of his shoulders, 2 turrets appeared on ball mounts, swiveling left and right. From his back 2 thruster packs appeared and he rose till he was 6 feet above the ground and began firing a steady stream of superheated plasma bolts at every flying parademon nearby. Acting as an anti-air deterrent for the parademons trying to head deeper in the city. Batman pulled out a few batarangs to begin assisting, but Naruto raised his hand to stop him and said, "Don't bother with that, Batman. You and Victor need fall back to a building rooftop or some other high ground. He can shoot down the flyers while covering you, but we need you to assess the battle and find out what that god's weakness is. We need a plan to defeat him quickly and you are our best strategist. The rest of us will buy you the time you need." "You're scared of him?" Batman observed, sounding almost casual despite the ongoing violence around them. "Of course I am." Naruto admitted in a reluctant show of his true emotions to the man. "I've already fought a deity before, so I already know what I am in for, the rest of you don't. Worse yet, from what I can feel, this guy is even stronger than the goddess I battled. I barely walked away from that battle alive, but none of us will survive this one if we don't all work as one unit." Engaging him without a plan was a big mistake. Frowning, Batman said. "What's done is done, Sage. I will figure something out, but for now, you Superman and Wonder Woman look like our best hope of stalling him. When will your full power return?" "As best as I can tell, in a few minutes. Unfortunately, against a god, a few minutes might as well be tomorrow or next year. I guess I'll just have to do this the old-fashioned way," Naruto said with a frown, before cracking his knuckles in the palm of each hand. "Just keep Victor out of trouble and have him focus only on shooting down the parademons in the sky. Darkseid is way beyond either of you, and it would be difficult to end this war without a mind as gifted as yours. The rest of us will handle Darkseid in the meantime." But that Naruto jumped into air, crossing 100-meter distance in an instant. A parademon spotting him, flew low and directly into his path to stop him, but he punched it right towards Darkseid on the ground, the action cancelling out his own forward momentum and making him drop from the air like a rock. Darkseid backhanded the improvised parademon projectile aside almost negligently, but in doing so created the opening Naruto wanted. His feet had barely hit the ground before he shot forward at hypersonic velocities, creating an impressive shockwave in the process that scattered the parademons attempting to surround him. Darkseid was standing with his right hand still hanging somewhat to his side after backhanding his minion. It was only for a second and barely something most people could take advantage of, but most people weren't Naruto. In an instant Naruto was there besides the giant, and then he shot past Darkseid, or would have had he not grabbed onto Darkseid's still extended arm and held on like his life depended on it. His sheer acceleration more than sufficient to pull Darkseid completely off balance and nearly topple him. This also served to distract him from paying attention to a charging Superman who chose that exact moment to drive his fist into the new god's face hard. To the parademons bearing witness, if they even had the mental capacity to properly appreciate and process what had just happened, they would have acknowledged it as something they had never seen before. A mortal laying a god among gods flat out on his back with a punch, and it certainly wouldn't be the last time that Superman would do this to Darkseid. Not wanting to give him a chance to rise again, Wonder Woman jumped high in the air, intent on bringing her sword down to stab Darkseid through the heart and complete the ancient mission of the Amazons. Unfortunately, all the heroes had done so far was knock Darkseid onto his back, and while Naruto had let go of Darkseid after setting him up for Superman to land his punch, Darkseid had decided to hold on to Naruto instead. With barely any exertion on the part of the god, he tossed the blonde ninja straight into Diana at Mach 8. Ooh. Off. The duo groaned as they collided with each other in a thunderclap of power, before bowling over a nearby tree, which snapped in half from the sheer impact, and then slamming into an abandoned car, where they ended up in an array of tangled limbs. It was mere luck that Diana didn't skewer Naruto with her sword during the collision, and it took a moment for the two to extricate themselves from each other and regain their bearings. The duo were in the midst of recovering when Aquaman tried to stab Darkseid in the face with a mighty roar, but Darkseid in a surprising show of speed, sidestepped the attack and punched the Atlantean away. Lucky the king of Atlantis blocked the retaliatory attack with his trident instead of his body and as a result was only blasted into nearby building. Darkseid's eyes lit up with crimson power in order to incinerate Aquaman, but several spears and swords of water slammed into his face. They did not even make a scratch on his terrifying visage, but the sheer heat from Darkseid's eye beams caused the water to burst into steam, concealing the battlefield for half a second. The wave of Darkseid's hand immediately cleared away the steam, and it came just in time for Flash to appear from seemingly nowhere with a piece of steel piping which he slammed into Darkseid's face at 90% of the speed of light. There was an explosion of light and energy as the metal pipe simply vanished and Darkseid flew backwards for a few hundred meters, bouncing and tumbling head over heels before he rolled over and stopped in a crouch, then slowly rose to his feet. His face was covered in black soot, unfortunately there was no clear visual indicator of him having taken any damage. Darkseid did look pissed though. Almost on instinct the entire team of heroes save Batman and Victor quickly assembled around the Flash, almost protectively. It made sense, with him having done the most damage to their enemy so far, even if it was just cosmetic damage. Turning to Superman the speedster asked. Now what? That didn't seem to do anything. Before the Man of Steel could reply, Darkseid cut in. Now, you die. The new god raised his arms above his head, each one glowing a brilliant red and then shifting to white as he channeled enormous amounts of destructive power into the limbs. His intent was clear, to bring them down and unleash all that energy in an instant. The shockwave and sheer amount of destructive energy would likely kill most of the more human members of the team on impact, as well as level an untold amount of the neighborhood, possibly city. Naruto knew he couldn't let that happen, so he reacted immediately. Diana, catch his right arm. It was all Naruto had time to say to the woman before he had to move. He would have told Superman, but he wasn't sure if the alien would do as instructed or take a second to think about it, a second that they really didn't have. Diana trusted him far more than anyone else on the team and wouldn't question him. The duo blurred forward with speeds that impressed even the Flash, before stopping on either side of Darkseid, just in time for the Apokoliptan god to bring down both arms. There should have been an explosion of light and shockwave of incinerating power that would reduce the local landscape to nightmare vision resembling Darkseid's homeworld. Instead, the attack was stopped dead in its tracks, caught upon Naruto and Diana's forearms and held firmly in place. However, this little victory came at a cost. Aya. The scream tore from Naruto's throat of its own volition as he felt his very skin begin to sizzle and bubble under the overwhelming godly power of Darkseid. The blindingly radiant energy contained in each of Dark God's arms began to eat at Naruto's skin and flesh in a way he hadn't experienced since before he befriended Kurama and purified its chakra. Only this was thousands of times worse than the damage done by the corrosive chakra of the four-tailed berserker state he used to go into whenever he got angry enough. Yet, not even for a second did Naruto contemplate dropping Darkseid's arm. Gritting his teeth, Naruto kept Darkseid's left arm in place, his only feeling of relief coming from the knowledge that Diana was not similarly injured from touching Darkseid's glowing right arm. Apparently her metal bracelets were powerful enough to withstand the godly attack somehow. The part of him wanted to know where she got them and whether he could get a pair of his own with an Anbu pattern. He was still a ninja after all. The rest of him was focused on ignoring the mind-breaking pain caused by the foul energies, trying to invade his body and break it down to its composite atoms. Thankfully for his pain tolerance, this all happened in the span of seconds, and before Darkseid could even react to his foiled attack, Naruto yelled. Superman. As if knowing exactly what he was thinking, Superman appeared in blur of his own speed and delivered the most powerful and vicious uppercut in the history of Earth directly to Darkseid's chin. The sheer power of the shockwave generated from the impact was enough to scatter both Naruto and Diana in separate directions and launch Darkseid straight out of the city like a rocket. Naruto wouldn't have been surprised if the new god found himself in orbit after that. Arg. Damn it. Naruto grunted as he got back to his feet with fancy kick-up, his hands hanging uselessly at his sides, too badly burned and painful to be of any immediate use. Thankfully, his regenerative healing still worked and even Darkseid, for all his terrible power, didn't seem to have the ability to negate it, or at least had chosen not to use it. Otherwise Naruto would have been truly screwed. You're hurt. He heard Mara speak up as she ran up to him from somewhere nearby. There was a strange amount of concern directed towards him in the pretty Ritide's voice that surprised the ninja. Naruto liked it. He winced in pain as he tried to move his arms but immediately relented, settling for simply replying. I am already healing, I will be fine in a little bit. You need to fall back. You are no good to us like this. Green Lantern said, flying down to them after scanning Naruto with his ring. Naruto shook his head, stubbornly gritting his teeth through the pain and replied. No, I need to go on the attack. Don't be foolish, my friend. You are hurt and until you heal, you will just get in the way. This time it was Aquaman who spoke up, having regrouped with everyone around Naruto. The others didn't say anything, but he could tell they all agreed with the Atlantean king. Sighing he said. You misunderstand. I need to go on the attack, true, but I don't mean this me. I've already created an army of myself that is standing by and ready for action. I just need to bring them all here. You mean your copy's right? Superman asked, understanding what Naruto intended to do. To which he nodded and then turned in the direction that the fastest of them, the only one who had yet to regroup with the team. The Flash was just finishing his fight with a few of the remaining parademons, the other invaders having already been killed off or followed after their master, wherever he had been punched to by Superman. Naruto had no doubt that Darkseid would be back soon, and it was best they not waste time. Yes, I just need them here for this. Flash. Naruto said, before yelling for the red and gold-garbed hero. I'm here. The speedster replied, materializing in front of them from a bolt of golden lightning, a millisecond later. Go get me one of my clones, I got something in mind, but I need them over here right now, before Darkseid gets back. Naruto spoke with an air of urgency. On it. The speedster replied and then simply vanished, faster than even Naruto's eyes could follow. Had he gotten faster? Will one clone be enough? Asked Wonder Woman in a concerned tone. For what I need? Yes. Was all Naruto managed before the Flash reappeared with a perfect copy of Naruto besides him. The clone looked around at the destruction before settling on the original's injuries, a worried expression appearing on his face as he did so. I heard you wanted to see me. The clone said, giving him a thorough once-over before focusing on his arms and adding in a dry tone. And by the way, you look like shit, boss. Naruto snorted in response to the clone's comment. His arms had healed enough to move, so he threw a palm-sized rock at the clone who easily caught it and raised an eyebrow at the action. With smirk Naruto said. Like you could do any better against Darkseid. Not that getting the shit kicked out of me wasn't expected, he's a god after all. Anyway, I need you to put a flying thunder god marker on that stone. I overloaded my chakra pathways earlier and they are still healing. The clone winced before it grumbled something unflattering under his breath, but still did as ordered. Once the mark was in place, it tossed the rock into the middle of the street. Seeing the job done, he added. Before you dispel, I need every clone not protecting civilians to get their ass over here now. We have another god to battle, and this guy is far stronger than Kaguya ever was. With the message delivered, the clone dispelled itself and spread its memories to the others. The cloud of smoke from its dispersal hadn't even faded away before they started appearing, hundreds of Naruto's clones, materializing around the stone bearing the flying thunder god marker. Every single one of them already in sage mode and glaring upwards in the direction of the new god and his parademons, clearly in anticipation of the coming battle. It was time to stop playing around and deal with this god in the only way mortals had ever been able to do so since the beginning of time across the Omniverse. By fighting them with full intent to kill and a desperation born of an almost insane desire to live, that and sprinkling of a miracle on the side. Turning to his clones, Naruto barked a final order. Go bring me that god's head. It felt good to say that. He thought. A unified chorus of yes sir that they responded with made Naruto give a smile so bloodthirsty that it sent shivers up his fellow teammates' collective spines. Then with a flare of their chakra, the clones all entered into their kurama sage chakra modes before shooting off into the sky in pursuit of the evil god. Darkseid frowned as he hovered somewhere in the outer atmosphere of the planet. This changed things. This newcomer was an unexpected development in the invasion plan. Even from where he was floating, the god could clearly see the newcomer's glowing army of copies rising into the skies with clear intent to attack him. Making copies wasn't an especially complicated trick. In the many millennia since his rise to power, Darkseid had seen a dozen different versions of that same trick. His battle instincts, however, told him that it would be an unexpectedly effective trick in this situation when coupled by the newcomer's physical prowess. From the minute he had laid eyes on this version of the Justice League, Darkseid had known that something was different. He had already defeated and killed the Kryptonian called Superman many times in other iterations of this universe, along with his fellow teammates. He had done it so many times, in fact, that he wasn't even taking this whole fight seriously. It would simply be unbecoming of a fourth-dimensional divine being such as himself, a being that literally existed beyond the universe itself, to take a fight with anything confined to the third dimension seriously. Not to mention he was rather distracted with finding his daughter Grail, a child he had conceived with an Amazon assassin over 1500 years ago. A demigoddess who had somehow inherited his Omega effect and evil, whereas his fully divine children had failed. He intended to make her his heir or a weapon against his foes, perhaps both. However, even in his distracted state, Darkseid was fully aware of one thing. Throughout the multiverse, across every Earth he had conquered, the heroes that came to the world's defense were largely the same. It was almost always the Kryptonian, the insane human dressed like a bat, the Amazon princess and the Speedforce conduit that were the group's core members. With at least one human Green Lantern member, the Atlantean King, as well as either the champion from the Rock of Eternity or a Green Martian. Generally 7 to 8 members with very little divergence in the group, and as a result he always killed them in much the same way. However, on this Earth, not only did the Justice League have 9 members, one of them was this newcomer whom he did not recognize from any of the other Earths he conquered, not to mention his powers were unfamiliar. They were not magic, but rather a form of life force unlike anything he had ever felt before, not to mention there was something else in him, something truly ancient. Had Darkseid been any other god, old or new, this unknown factor would have been enough to give him pause and make him wary. Unfortunately he was Darkseid, Lord of Apocalypse, and this newcomer wasn't a threat to him at all. Darkseid had killed entire teams of Justice League members and blown up numerous iterations of the planet Earth. That the newcomer was even weaker than Superman made him almost worth completely disregarding almost. No matter how worthless the creature was, Darkseid couldn't deny that his strange abilities made this battle intriguing. The newcomer was no Kryptonian, Speedforce conduit, Amazon or even clever like the man pretending to be a bat. But Darkseid could tell that he had a bit of everything that his fellow champions of Earth possessed, the very things that had made Darkseid respect them, even after slaughtering them so many times, albeit begrudgingly. Like the Bat-Human, he had a mind for strategy and a disregard for fair play when engaged in combat. His speed was not quite up to the Speedforce conduit's level but quite impressive, faster than the Kryptonian when he wasn't flying at least. His durability and strength was around the Amazon princess's level, and he had similar skill in combat it seemed. He also possessed the Kryptonian's sheer determination and ability to rally his comrades. The newcomer also seemed to have a unique talent for adaptation and creativity, allowing him to anticipate and choose the best moment to act in any given situation, turning things to his advantage. He had after all been the sole reason Superman had even managed to punch him so effectively twice. Strangely, the newcomer didn't seem to be entirely aware of this power and was seemingly acting on pure instinct. All in all, it was all a pleasant surprise for Darkseid, and if nothing else kept this battle from becoming tedious. Perhaps when he was finished here, he would spare this Earth. If only to see whether it could entertain him further in the millennia to come. They had earned that much in his opinion, but first he had a Justice League to defeat and a missing daughter to find. When the battle began anew, the other superheroes fell back to Batman's position to observe. With over 2,000 clones on the battlefield, or in this case, the sky, there really wasn't any space to join in. The Gothamite hero had hooked up his computer and satellites to Victor, who was tracking Darkseid and the clones via drone cameras, satellite imagery, and his own array of imaging systems. Batman was then monitoring all that information and instructing Victor on what to focus on. The two made a great pair for the purpose of information gathering, tactical beepasis and strategy. When the clones first engaged Darkseid, he initially took a few hits from the clones deliberately. Naruto didn't know if it was his pride or something else. Unfortunately Naruto and by extension his clones just weren't strong enough to harm Darkseid in any meaningful way. The new god actually took great pleasure in incinerating his clones or simply punching them back to Earth. Golden meteors, which were in fact clones being punched out of the sky and down to Earth, were now a pretty common sight. Their own durability in Kurama Sage mode ensuring that they didn't immediately die when he punched, but it left them weakened enough that when they finally collided with the planet they did dispel in massive shockwaves. It was a fate that Naruto felt was considerably better than being incinerated by Darkseid's eye beams. Any clones hit by those beams simply ceased to exist. No memories or chakra ever returned to him. All in all, the whole battle was more akin to a slaughter than anything else, in which Naruto kept throwing bodies at the god to keep him busy. However, that would do the heroes no good, so in true Naruto fashion, the Konoha shinobi or more specifically his clones, decided to improvise. If he couldn't hit hard enough to hurt Darkseid because he wasn't at Superman's levels of strength, then all he needed to do was go faster. Just like the Flash had shown him earlier. There was distinct difference in the feeling of a tennis ball hitting you at 60 miles per hour versus a tennis ball hitting you 600 miles per hour, one hit a lot harder than the other. Naruto's fists were a lot heavier than a tennis ball, and his top speed was slightly faster than light. The ninja's clones decided to combine the two, and suddenly Darkseid started taking some real hits. He's doing it, he's winning. Flash said optimistically as they watched clones flying back and forth in a golden blaze at such speeds the atmosphere around them ignited and formed cloaks of superheated plasma around their glowing bodies. When they would pick up enough speed, they would then slam into Darkseid hard enough they would pop, but also leave what amounted to explosions in the hundreds of megatons. The cloud layer above them had actually dispersed from the first of these impacts, and so far they had witnessed over 30. The shockwaves so powerful that even on the ground what windows still remained undamaged in the city rattled violently. The only reason someone like Batman could even process the speeds of the various attacks was because he had every satellite within the area pointed straight down at the area they were fighting in, and every camera on this side of the planet point up. Victor was then taking all the footage and the radio waves in the air, bouncing them back and forth before running it through his own systems, and then compiling a 3D video of the battlefield, slowed down enough for Batman to beep eyes. No, he's not. The Dark Knight cut in with a shake of his head. Despite the fact that each of the clones were attacking faster and faster with each second, they were still losing. Green Lantern frowned as he heard this and said, "Why do you have to be such a downer, Batman? Clearly he is turning Darkseid into a ping pong ball. Look closer. Just the speed necessary to impact him hard enough to send Darkseid flying is killing Sage's clones. Every hit is like a kamikaze suicide attack, in which his copies are giving their all but failing to do enough damage to Darkseid fast enough for it to matter. Naruto is losing clones fast, far too fast, and worse yet, Darkseid is killing some his clones with his I-beams before they can blitz him. He will run out of clones soon." It's true. This was only meant to buy time. Right now, Superman and maybe Wonder Woman are the only ones who can really take him on safely. The rest of us need to focus on distracting him and make an opening for them. I'm sure that after the thrashing we took earlier and seeing Darkseid actually put some effort into this fight, we now understand a bit better exactly what we are up against. Naruto said, but he was specifically looking at Green Lantern, as were everyone else. Looking bewildered by all the stares, Lantern asked, "Why the hell is everyone looking at me? You attacked first and got punched into a building for your trouble." Batman offered helpfully. "And Sage got his arms burned to a crisp. I don't think he of all people can throw stones at anyone in this situation." Green Lantern defended. "You were injured due to your own brashness, you attacked Darkseid without backup or a plan. Sage got his arms burned because he and Wonder Woman were trying to keep Darkseid from hitting us all with his attack. Most of you would have survived it, but me and Victor likely wouldn't. The difference is simply that Sage was fighting for the whole team and you weren't. You need to start doing so too. We all need to fight as one team or our world ends tonight." Batman finished heatedly scolding Green Lantern, though he hadn't intended to get so passionate. "Arg. When you put it like that, Spooky, you make me sound like a jackass. Fine, I am sorry for rushing so recklessly, I will do my best to work with everyone as a team," he said, directing his apology to Naruto. His tone was light, almost not serious, but had genuineness to it that showed he really meant it. Naruto nodded as he replied, "Thank you, Green Lantern, but to fight as a team we need an actual plan. Batman, have you had any luck with figuring out a weakness or better yet a method to kill that bastard, cause I am running out of clones?" But the question directed at him, Batman responded, "Kill him, no. I also haven't seen anyone do anything to really hurt him critically. That said, despite his durability he keeps avoiding Aquaman's trident and Wonder Woman hasn't stabbed him yet, not for lack of trying. He just keeps dodging them. I don't think it's a coincidence." "That sounds reasonable enough, let's try stabbing him. If Aquaman would lend me or Flash his weapon, then we can see if this works," Naruto said, motioning to himself and the Flash as he eyed the golden weapon in question. Aquaman however protested vehemently, saying, "This is the symbol of my kingship over Atlantis, it's not something I am willing to just hand over to anyone." "Well, you are not fast enough to get to him in time, me and Flash are, and we still need to stab Darkseid. If he even looks at you while you go on the attack, he will vaporize you with his I-beams, and unlike Superman's heat vision, even if you somehow dodge, his I-beams can still chase you. Besides, if you aren't willing to hand over the trident and we fail here, you won't have a kingdom to rule over at the end of the day, cause the world will end," Naruto said seriously, reminding the Atlantean king of the consequence of failure. Aquaman hesitated, a thoughtful look appearing in his eyes, before he said, "I'll think aboo." Unfortunately he never finished the sentence, a warning flared to life on the HUD installed under his cowl, and Bruce Wayne looked up in horror. "Brace for impact." They were the last words Batman yelled before something fell from the sky and crashed into the earth with enough force to topple the nearby skyscrapers. The impacting throwing the heroes unceremoniously of their collective feet as hurricane-force winds and dust sprung up from the center of the explosion and threw them everywhere. A mushroom cloud of condensed dust and other particulates formed over the entire harbor area. The whole battlefield was covered in it, blinding everyone from seeing through it except Superman. Thankfully it all cleared quickly enough to reveal Darkseid standing in the midst of hundreds of Naruto clones, each of them popping slowly, one after another. The new god wasn't looking too good either, his granite-like face looking surprisingly messed up. His helmet-like headgear was half destroyed, there was soot and gaping cracks all over his once pristine armor, which now looked like it had been the chew toy of some kind of cosmic horror. Even his face looked uneven and covered in scratches and minor wounds, with his lip having been visibly busted up enough to leak some blood. Despite this, evil tyrant was grinning, like he was enjoying this. "Is that all your world has to offer, heroes?" he asked in a thunderous but clearly mocking voice that could be heard for miles around. If not for the fact that he was clearly taunting them, he would have sounded almost genuinely disappointed. From what Naruto was picking up through his empathy, Darkseid was actually amused. "We are not done, not by a long shot, Darkseid," Superman replied. The strength of his voice rallying the heroes and giving them hope as they got back to their feet. "Then come and fight me, let us see how long it takes my Omega beams to reduce you to ashes," the god challenged, with his eyes flaring to brilliant crimson in the same sentence. The zigzag pattern of his now named Omega beams shot straight towards the recovering group of heroes. Due to their unpredictable movement, no one knew who Darkseid was aiming for, and anyone but Wonder Woman, Superman and perhaps Naruto would surely end up dead the minute they hit. Diana decided to take that particular risk off the table right away by charging directly at the Omega beams and then deflecting them away with her bracelets. The Man of Steel then used that opening to flank Darkseid's left side and slam a right hook into the side of his face, disrupting the new god's focus and dissipating the Omega beams he was projecting. Superman's follow-up left fist landed just as quickly as his right, creating a shockwave with the impact and forcing Darkseid a step back, then his third right actually knocked the new god over. As he fell to the ground, Darkseid performed a combat roll and rose just as Superman came in with a fourth punch, but this time he ducked under the hero as he flew at him. He then grabbed Superman by his cape and yanked him backwards, straight into a clothesline. Superman yelped as he hit the ground. He barely had time to even groan before Darkseid brought his boot down on his stomach, forcing Superman's body to fold in half at the waist, then pinned him there. The impact shook the ground with the force of an 7.9 earthquake on the Richter scale, while Darkseid's eyes lit up to incinerate Batman, who was retreating to a safe distance. He fortunately didn't get a chance because Green Lantern created a massive hammer and slammed it straight into Darkseid's head, preventing him from firing. Unfortunately, Darkseid in retaliation whipped Superman around by the cape and slammed the Kryptonian's indestructible body into the Lantern Corps member. There was a loud crack as Green Lantern's right arm shattered from the impact and he was hurled into the distance. Using Superman as flail, Darkseid then swung Superman at Naruto, but the ninja ducked under the improvised weapon. Aquaman, who had pounced into the air in order to skewer the god with his trident, wasn't so lucky and got hit in the head, launching him across the battlefield. Mera was the next target of Darkseid's improvised bludgeoning tool, but Flash was faster than Darkseid's swing and moved Mera out of the way to safety. However, the impact of Superman with the ground ruptured a gas pipeline and caused an explosion. The energy of the explosion, tossing Flash and Mera to the side and obscuring Darkseid from view. Wonder Woman burst through the dust, sword in hand and wreathed in lightning. She was ready to skewer Darkseid, but the new god placed Superman in the path of the attack as human shield. Superman would have ended up with a hole in his stomach had Naruto not suddenly appeared on their flank and kicked the flat side of her blade up, redirecting away from their ally. He then sweep-kicked Darkseid's feet from under him, just as a powerful blast of focused green energy shot forth from a mech that Green Lantern was piloting and hit the new god in his face. As he stumbled backward, his grip loosened and Diana's lasso of truth wound itself around Superman's arm before she pulled him away from the evil god. Superman took that same opportunity to open up with his heat vision on Darkseid, forcing him even further back. Following her instincts, Diana raised her hands and a massive bolt of lightning came crashing down on Darkseid, pinning him in place, while Green Lantern projected a spaceship of some kind high in the sky that shot down at full speed and crashed into the god with catastrophic amount of force. The explosion so powerful it was like a nuke went off. Luckily 4 clones appeared on either side of Darkseid, chakra chains emerging from their backs and instantly creating a barrier around the dark god and the explosion. Because they were also inside, they were only able to contain the explosion for a few seconds before they too disintegrated. Though Naruto found himself wondering what the hell was in the spaceship Green Lantern had made, after all it exploded more like a bomb than anything else. He shook his head a second later to clear his thoughts. None of their admittedly impressive teamwork had done the trick of putting down Darkseid. It simply wasn't enough, good thing he had a plan for that. The dust and smoke cleared enough to see a shadowy figure with crimson glowing eyes in its midst. There was no question as to who it was. Darkseid stepped through the flames looking more battered than he had before. His face a snarl as he thundered. "You thought chains, explosions and a barrier could stop me?" Naruto shook his head and yelled. "No. But it made you look." "Huh?" Darkseid responded in confusion. His confusion disappeared when he heard a popping sound behind him. Another Naruto clone appeared there after undoing its transformation into a piece of rubble, its hand glowing a vibrant orange gold. Darkseid spun around with such unbelievable speed it seemed as he teleported in place, his eyes already lit up like an exploding sun, and half a dozen Omega beams shooting out in their trademark zigzag pattern towards the clone. But it was already far too late. It was a move that would wow the world for generations and cement Naruto's reputation as the craziest member of the Justice League. The shinobi slid into a splits and swung a punch right into Darkseid's crotch right before the Omega beams erased the clone from existence. The impact was like a nuke went off, so powerful that a shockwave of light and overpressure emanated from Ground Zero. Spiderweb cracks formed, spreading out all across the battlefield, except for Ground Zero. Anything within 10 meters of Darkseid and where the clone had been instantly turned to dust. Darkseid's eyes bugged out, as despite himself, even a being of his power and magnitude couldn't help but bend over and clutch at his junk. His Apokoliptan battle skirt and under armor having done nothing to keep out the concentrated chakra in the clone's right arm from exposing Darkseid to a world of agony only men could ever truly know. Yet it wasn't over. More clones blitzed in at speeds approaching relativistic. The first giving Darkseid a vicious uppercut in the face as he was crouching over, snapping his head backwards like an elastic band. The impact itself being great enough to pop the clone from sheer backlash, then the second clone with a literal lightning-fast dropkick drove both the soles of its boots into Darkseid's chest, shoot him backwards like a missile before it popped. It was the third clone which, while matching the speed of Darkseid's backward acceleration, slammed a dark purple ball of concentrated pure chakra with a shuriken-like ring of wind around it right into his chest. A tailed beast-rasen shuriken to be exact. "I sincerely hope this hurts," the clone said before popping, and by then they were far beyond the city limits. Darkseid didn't even have the time to shield his face with his arms before the technique destabilized and detonated. Boom. A new sun bloomed into existence in the form of massive ball light over 50 miles into the ocean. The roar and pressure from the detonating tailed beast-rasen shuriken easily displacing the water around it till it formed tsunami-like waves. Winds with more power than an F5 tornado swept towards the city, while every remaining structure in the harbor area that had not already been leveled by the fighting earlier simply collapsed. As for Darkseid, there was no sign of him. The original Naruto wasn't so naive as to think the new god had been defeated by something like a tailed beast-rasen shuriken. Darkseid was clearly tougher than that. Still, it seemed the ruler of Apocalypse had been, for the moment at least, literally blown away. "He's out there," Naruto said as he looked towards the thick cloud of steam that remained in the wake of his tailed beast-rasen shuriken's detonation. Darkseid was somewhere out there. "You nuked him. You literally nuked the bastard. He should be dead, and you probably should have told us you can do that," Green Lantern said, his voice a mix of excitement, disbelief and a smidgen of fear as he added. "What kind of ninja did you say you were again?" Naruto gave the space cop a blank look as he sarcastically replied. "Right, cause it's just so easy to slip in. I can hurl balls of energy that detonate with power north of a 50 gigaton nuclear explosion into a conversation with a couple of people I only just met today and have every go normal. That kind of knowledge is scary to people at the best of times, and they tend to treat you like you might snap any second and kill them. I'd personally prefer it if you didn't all suddenly treat me like a ticking time bomb, kind of like you are doing right now, Lantern." Which is ironic considering Superman can probably bench press the planet or at least the moon, and no one is worried about him dropping it on us. "Sorry, and point taken. Still, the radiation," Green Lantern conceded. Naruto shook his head and said. "There is none, it's not a true nuke. It's chakra weaponized life force, so no radiation." Superman whistled as he said. "To think life force can do that. You must be very connected to life." "I like to think so. My code name is Sage after all, and I am actually Sage," Naruto responded. "To get back on topic, you said that you think Darkseid will be back." Batman decided to interrupt over the comms. "Definitely," Naruto responded without hesitation. The god was far too powerful to die that easily, even if that had been the most powerful attack his clones had thrown at him tonight. Early Superman punched him harder than my tailed beast ball detonated and he came back just fine from that. He'll be back. Then we shouldn't let our guard down. We need to figure out where you nuked him to," Batman finished. "I can't pick him up with my enhanced vision and hearing," Superman announced as he looked left and right, scanning the world with his X-ray vision as he liked to call it. Sighing in frustration, Naruto added. "I can't find him either. It's like he just blanketed the entire area with so much of his darkness and evil that my negative emotion sensing is effectively useless. I also can't sense his divine power for some reason. None of the life in the water has detected him so far, but most of the sea life fled when the fighting began or died with the shockwave from your nuke," Aquaman reported, clearly unhappy with Naruto for the amount of sea life the tailed beast-rasen shuriken killed. "The land animals and birds fled too," Diana chipped in. "I can run around and see what I find," Flash offered as he stood at the edge of the docks. "That sounds good, my remaining clones can join you. If one of them runs into Darkseid and dies, I will know exactly where he is," Naruto said, liking the idea. "That won't be necessary, the Speedforce conduit won't be going anywhere," A voice announced from ether before a massive hand reached out from the water below the docks and wrapped around Flash's entire leg. There was a loud crack as his femur shattered, and then before the speedster could scream or anyone else could even react, the Flash found himself being flung at hypersonic velocities out towards the ocean. Superman was about to chase after the speedster, but suddenly an overwhelming amount of killing intent slammed into the remaining heroes as Darkseid made his divine presence felt. From the water, the new god emerged with an ethereal glow around his body. It was the one place that no one really expected him to return from, and with the only person fast enough to properly react to him already flying out towards the ocean, no one was quite able to react to what Darkseid did next. Superman, Wonder Woman and a dozen of Naruto's remaining clones tried though. They instantly went on the attack, swarming Darkseid from all sides. The original Naruto would have been at their sides too, but he felt his instincts flare a warning at him. Instincts which quickly proved themselves to be right when Darkseid's hands began glowing again, shifting from crimson to pure white in a microsecond. Naruto expected him to try and slam the energy in the ground like he tried before, instead Darkseid clapped his hands together just as the clones, Superman and Wonder Woman got close. There was an explosion of power in which sound, pressure and light seemed to just mix, and Naruto felt his clone simply vanish. His eardrums burst as a wall of pure energy slammed into him and hurled him through the debris field left by half-dozen fallen buildings. Naruto smashed into a building after building, carving his way right through them like a hot knife through butter. Solid metal, rock and glass all parting around him like a river around a rock, with him being the rock. Naruto finally slowed to a stop after a quarter mile, his back a giant bleeding bruise at that point. He almost immediately leaped back to his feet despite his dislocated left arm, stressed spine and broken ribs, one of which had punctured a lung and was currently filling his chest cavity with blood. His regeneration would take care of it if he just sat still for a few seconds, but there was no time. Darkseid could and likely would murder all his allies before he could even finish healing, and he from what he could sense, Superman and Wonder Woman had been knocked a lot further away from the others than himself. He was the strongest one left. With a burst of speed that jolted every injury and sent pain through his entire body, Naruto returned to the battlefield. Flash was still gone, Superman and Wonder Woman were over a mile away from what he could sense, and there was no sign of Green Lantern. Luckily Victor and Batman, who were furthest from the battlefield, were crawling their way out of the debris with minor injuries. The damage received from Darkseid's last attack being exponentially greater the closer you were to the epicenter. Which left only Aquaman and Mera, and from what he could see, the two Atlanteans were not looking too good. Mera was bleeding from a bad-looking gash on her forehead and was favoring her left leg, her right was horrifically mangled. Her sexy green fish scale outfit had tears in it and scorch marks everywhere. Aquaman on the other hand looked relatively intact, save for the fact he was so dazed he couldn't tell up from down at the moment. This was of course a very bad thing since Darkseid was looking straight at him with the creepiest smirk Naruto had ever seen, and he'd seen Madara smile in glee. Mera must have seen it cause she yelled to Aquaman. "King Orin, get up, you need to move right now." Her words only seemed to make Darkseid's smile widen, as if he was enjoying her panic. The dizzy king of Atlantis however could only respond with, "Mera. It's me my liege, now get up, you are not safe," she said as she limped towards her king. When he failed to do that, she desperately said, "Please Arthur. You need to get up." It was like Darkseid was simply waiting for those final words, because his eyes lit up and he fired his Omega beam straight at Aquaman, fully intent to immolate the incapacitated king in front of the beautiful Redeed. Mera let out a scream that was both panic and defiance as she put pressure on her injured leg and jumped between the Omega beams and her king, clearly intent on dying for him. Naruto however couldn't let that happen, and at that exact moment he dug in deep for his chakra, regardless of whether his pathways were okay enough to use or not. He was going to save his teammates, even if it meant he blew up his chakra pathway system and killed himself. Somewhere deep inside his soul, he swore he would not let this brave woman die a fiery death, and in that very place something responded to his convictions. Unknown to him there was a pulse from his Godslayer mark, then the world around him stretched and twisted in ways was not meant to, and when things returned to normal, he was there. The Omega beams were already mere millimeters from Mera's face and chest, but moving at a snail pace. There was no more time, but Naruto was close enough to do something, and so he pushed the woman behind him and simply braced himself to take on the full power of Darkseid's Omega beams directly. He already knew that this was the same as courting death. A moment later in Naruto's world, his whole existence exploded in fire and pain for what felt like an entire lifetime, and then everything simply went black. Wow. I mean just wow. A voice said as he came to consciousness, his body seemingly floating around in the nothingness of the void once more. The voice sounded neither distinctly male or female, but rather like a blend of both sexes. Naruto remembered this place, he had been here once before. right after Kaguya banished him with her last bit of power. "Who's there?" Naruto asked, as he fruitlessly turned and twisted his astral body around to see who it was that spoke to him. Unfortunately he found no one, no matter which direction he looked in. It was just an endless abyss as far as he could tell, with nothing in any direction, forever. The part of him momentarily wondered if he had imagined the events of the last 3 weeks. If perhaps he had never left the abyss in the first place, and his subconscious desire to be hero had manifested itself in some extremely vivid dream or hallucination of a world that needed heroes. The last moments of a dying man, so to speak. Before his mind could go any further down this trail, he was dissuaded from such thoughts by the same voice which spoke up and assured him that it was all very real. "Oh, don't worry, it's just me. The person who saved you from oblivion. You remember that, right? Floating in an endless abyss much like this one, after Kaguya chucked you out of reality itself." So yes, that actually happened, and so did everything that followed after, including fighting Darkseid and dying at his hands. "I'm dead," Naruto said in resignation. He had expected to die, but somehow he had hoped he hadn't. He had no regrets though, he had died protecting the world. The fact that he had also saved a pretty deed was something that when got to the afterlife and found his parents, his mother would find both amusing and tragic. But of course, or we wouldn't be having this little impromptu meeting. "Well, don't worry about it, you are not completely dead, just enough so that we could talk a little. You should recover nicely when I'm done here." The voice said as if coming back to life was the most ordinary thing in the world. "I get live." This time Naruto couldn't hide his shock. He got the impression that the voice was nodding as it replied. "Yes. It's only fair, considering I let you die so that we could talk. Now when I found you in the endless void, I was very impressed that you didn't immediately disintegrate and turn into nothing. You are after all, not really that powerful." "You're the one who saved me?" Naruto questioned in surprise. The voice sounded a little irritated as it replied. "Didn't I make that obvious already?" "Yes, that was me, though the order to do so came down from the big boss himself. He wanted me to drop you off on Earth after a bit of an upgrade to your body and your abilities. Let me tell you kid, you were a mess and it took a bit of work to turn you into what you are now." "I'm sorry, I am not really following. What did you turn me into?" Naruto asked. The voice sounded surprised as it replied. "Surely you figured it out by now. You never asked yourself why you keep reacting so negatively to Darkseid, why you reacted to his parademons, why you were able to tell that Diana of Themyscira's powers felt divine." Naruto paused, he didn't know what to say. The voice was right, he had reacted to all those things, but he didn't know why. In the end he had chalked it all up to instinct or something along those lines. With all the fighting and Darkseid being right there, he had no time to figure out why he was able to do any of that, he just acted. Now though. Before he could think too deeply into it, the voice seemed to get impatient and said. "Do I really need to spell it out for you? Fine, you are Godkiller Naruto. A rare mortal with the ability to kill gods. Well, any godslayer can do pretty much the same thing I guess, but you are more than just some lucky runt with the power kill a god and steal a bit of its powers. No, this is not just something you can do, it's something you've been charged to do by those that the very gods consider to be their gods, the gods of the gods so to speak. Anyway, your duty is to kill rogue gods and to reverse the unjust disasters and curses that they would bring upon humanity and other mortals." "I'm a godkiller," Naruto uttered, the words sounding hollow as they left his lips. The voice went on explaining. "You were already a godslayer when I found you, a guy who through some random luck killed a god and was marked because of it. I took that mark, upgraded it and turned you into something more than just a godslayer. The godkiller exists to create balance, gods have duties, and they are necessary in the world, but when they do not do their duty, you come along to bring about their end, which resets them to default. And to be clear, just because you have this power does not mean we are allowing you to just go on killing rampage against every god or goddess you meet. A lot of restraint and good judgment is required to wield this power. In the past you've shown quite a bit of both, which is why you were chosen to wield it." "I'm honored," Naruto finally said, and he was. This was duty beyond his wildest dreams, and something that if he could master gave Earth a hope against Darkseid. The voice sounded proud as it said. "You should be, but enough about all that. What I find interesting above all else is that you haven't really used your godkiller powers. Don't get me wrong, whether you used them or not against Darkseid, he would have still handed you your ass. You are a newborn baby godkiller, and he is the level 100 endgame boss with max stats and everything. Still to piss him off so thoroughly and go so far with just those weak demigod powers that Hagoromo passed on to you. I gotta say, I am beyond impressed, I literally have no words to describe my awe of you Naruto Uzumaki. Seriously, I am quite literally in awe of you Naruto, and that's something that I thought stopped happening to me a couple of billion years ago. So now, I simply can't wait to see what you do with the godkiller powers I gave you." "I thank you. Who are you?" Naruto asked. I was wondering when you would ask that question. I can't tell you yet though, at least not yet. Don't worry, we will speak again soon and you won't have to die for us to do so. There is much I still need to tell you, but you first need to be better equipped to handle the weight of that kind of knowledge. Right now your mind would just break. Believe me, my very existence will quite literally shatter your worldview. That said, I suppose if you need a title to call me, for now, you can call me boss, cause that's actually who I am to you. It responded, with a hint of amusement. Alright boss. Naruto said cautiously, testing the word. This was a truly bizarre situation, even more so than the usual weirdness that surrounded his life. Oh my, you are so cute Naruto. I really wish I had more time to talk with you, but well, you are already reviving, and your buddies need you to deal with Darkseid. I gotta admit thought, your friends are pretty hot, not that I'm into you mortals, cause that never ends well, and I got my eyes on another boo. The voice suddenly faded. Naruto. He thought he heard something, but Naruto wasn't entirely sure. The dream, vision or whatever it was he had just experienced was already fading from memory. Naruto. The sound came again, it sounded familiar, both the voice and what was being said. He even identified it as distinctly female. Naruto. Yes, I definitely heard it right, whoever was speaking is calling my name. He thought to himself as slowly returned to consciousness. Naruto. The next time his name was called, the voice was loud enough that it hurt his newly regenerated ears. Please, whoever you are, stop screaming in my ear. I am still regenerating. He cried out while covering his ears with hands. The female voice audibly sighed in relief as she said. Oh thank Hera you are alive. Don't move, you're hurt very badly. Hera. That could only be Diana. Diana? Naruto asked, forcing his eyes open. They stung terribly, like someone had poured chili sauce in them. Ignoring the pain, Naruto noted that the world was blurry and out of focus, but his vision was slowly returning. He could make out the movement of a shadowy figure sitting on his right and another on his left side. Yes, I am here and so is Mera. Diana responded, clarifying mysterious the identity of the other figure. Naruto quickly realized he was half naked. The only thing that had survived Darkseid's Omega beams were his trousers, which was now a pair of tattered shorts, and Tsunade's crystal around his neck. There was a jacket was covering his naked chest, while his bare feet healed from a plethora of burns, cuts and bruises. Then there was his head. Naruto could feel a distinct lack of hair on his head as the wind caressed it. Groaning in embarrassment at his sudden boldness, he chose to instead ask. What happened? You saved Mera and Aquaman's lives, and in the process kept Darkseid busy, long enough for me and Superman to recover. Flash also survived being thrown into the ocean and managed to get back to land, while Aquaman got off with a mild concussion, but is otherwise unharmed. Mera's leg however, is unfortunately going to keep her out of the fight, at least as far as battling Darkseid goes, and Green Lantern isn't much better. His arm was shattered in several places when Darkseid hit him there while using Superman as club. The team can still fight, but we are not at full power anymore, truthfully we are not anywhere close to it. And then there is Superman. Diana finished her report, looking to the side sadly. What happened to him Diana? Naruto asked, worried about the alien. This did not sound good. Shaking her head she replied. We lost him Naruto. After you went down, those of us who could do so regrouped and tried to avenge you. We thought you were dead, in fact we were sure of it, and Superman got very angry. While we were recovering, Darkseid spent nearly 10 minutes trying to burn you to ashes, and your powers kept fighting him the whole way. Mera and Arthur saw the whole thing, but me and Superman only caught the tail end of it, right when your powers finally failed to protect you from Darkseid. Superman said your heart stopped beating, so he rushed in and tried to stop Darkseid, despite Batman's orders to wait. Instead Darkseid took him out with another blast of his Omega beams, and then had Superman's unconscious body transported to Apokoliptan by one of his parademons. I tried to stop Darkseid, we all did, but it was too late to save Superman or you, and we were quickly defeated. If only I knew how to use these new lightning powers you activated better, then I could have saved him, maybe even prevent you from nearly dying. Noting the tears in the Amazon princess's eyes, Naruto said. That wasn't your fault. None of it was. Diana scowled and replied. How is it not my fault? It's been the Amazon's mission for the last 2000 years to kill Darkseid, and I am their princess. I am the strongest Amazon ever, the chosen champion of the gods, and I failed to fulfill that mission. I failed. So what? Naruto asked. Huh? She replied, confused by his response. So what if you failed? Naruto asked her again, as he finally healed enough to sit upright. Staring into her teary eyes he said. Failure is as much a part of life as success. It teaches you valuable lessons, giving you regrets that ensure you don't repeat your mistakes, and a drive so that you succeed at your goals the next time. You are not the first Amazon to fail, you won't be the last either. The fact that you failed just makes you human, and last I checked there was nothing wrong with that. Having the will and the courage to get back up and try again though, now that's something heroic. So it doesn't matter if you failed to kill Darkseid or stop him from taking Superman. Get over it and move on. Darkseid is still here, meaning we have another chance to kick his ass and get our friend back, right? But this is Darkseid we are talking about, he has set the whole world on fire, and he wants to kill or capture everybody. He almost killed me, but then you saved me, and he tried to kill you. He burned you so badly your skin began to glow like hot embers, and I couldn't do a damn thing to stop him. How can you be so optimistic at a time like this? How can you even believe we will win, after going through something as traumatic as you just experienced? Mera spoke up, unable to believe that he could be so optimistic after what he just went through. Looking from one woman to the next and then back, Naruto asked them a simple question in response. Do either of you want to quit? No. Of course not. They simultaneously replied. Then that's that. Dwelling on the past is pointless, unless you are learning from your failures, then it's vital. But right now, we should focus on what we can do, and one thing I can do is keep getting back up to fight. I'm hoping that two of the most beautiful and powerful women I have ever met on this planet will be willing to get up and fight alongside me. I'm also hoping that Batman is still alive and has my plan ready. If so, then hopefully said plan will give us the edge that we desperately need against Darkseid. I need to check my chakra pathways, but hopefully they have healed enough so that I can finally fight at full power. Then we can figure out how to save Superman. Naruto said with a smile. That's a lot of things you seem to be hoping for, there. Mera pointed out. Well, of course. But the world is depending on us, so if we lose hope then it's over for everyone. Naruto replied, before asking. So are you two willing to join me for another round with that evil giant? Rising to her feet Diana looked into the distance and said. Yeah, I want to try again. I won't give up. That's the spirit. How about you Mera? Naruto asked turning to the Redeed. I am willing, but with my leg the way it is. I don't know how useful I will be. She replied with a shrug. Then I guess we should take a look at that leg. Naruto said as he tried to stand. Wow. Slow down there, you're still hurt and in no condition to do anything. Mera yelled placing a hand on his shoulder. She then looked at her own mangled leg and said. Neither of us should be moving. Naruto began to say something, but paused as he felt a rush of power flow through his body, before smiling. His chakra was pulsing rapidly as it rushed through his chakra pathways, without causing any pain, he was finally healed. So he said. I am perfectly fine, and it seems that already one of my hopes has come to pass. But that Naruto's wounds which had been healing at a slow rate from where he had been incinerated by Darkseid's Omega beams, suddenly began to visibly regenerate at an extremely rapid rate. Damaged flesh simply flaking off and instantly being replaced by new tissue. Even his hair regrew to its former length, and within seconds Naruto was completely whole. Golden flame-like chakra flickered into existence on his shoulders, little more than small spark at first, but quickly increasing in size like a fire fed on a steady cocktail of oxygen and dry wood. It quickly spread across his body, enveloping him in its warmth. While on his right hand the white Six Paths Yang seal, surrounded by Tomo in the pattern of a sun reappeared, and along the length of his arm the flame patterns flowed, up to the other seal he had gotten from killing Kaguya, his Godslayer no Godkiller mark appeared. As he stood up, what was left of his tattered clothes took on the same golden glow before instantly repairing themselves around his form. With that done Naruto placed a hand above Mera's leg, and his chakra flowed from the Yang seal onto it, easily healing the horribly mangled wound which by rights should have just been amputated. Mera's shattered right leg simply seemed to twist and bend in a sickening display of contortions, before straightening out as new flesh quickly replaced the old under Naruto's golden chakra. Within seconds, Mera was perfectly fine, much to both her and Diana's amazement. Naruto's body was fully aglow and wreathed in golden flame-like chakra at that point. He then stretched out his fists to both of them and said. Bump fists with me. Why? Mera asked. But Naruto simply insisted. Just do it. I want to give you something, but you have to be willing to receive it. The two girls decided to go along with it and did as instructed, and the second their fist connected, they felt a rush of power flow through them, the likes of which only one of them had ever experienced before. Mera smiled basking in the euphoric feel as she said. Wow, I feel amazing. Better than I have in weeks. Thank you. No problem. Naruto replied with a kind smile. It was Wonder Woman who realized what was happening though, as she spoke up saying. This is like what you did with me, isn't it, but even stronger. Yes. I didn't even think I could connect to other people and draw out their latent abilities until I accidentally did it earlier with you Diana. Then my clones did it again when I was transporting people to the safe zones earlier. Normally when teleporting others, I am covering them in my chakra, like a blanket and just moving the blanket which in turn moves the people. It has no effect on their physiology, and even using chakra to heal people doesn't really do anything else but heal. However, this is different from what I have gathered. I am connecting to their inner life force and unlocking something that's already there. Normal humans don't have chakra pathways or much chakra, so I have no idea what I am unlocking, but with Diana, she got lightning powers. So the question is, what did you get, Mara? Naruto asked the retreated Atlantean. She shrugged as she replied. I don't know, but I feel great, like I am bursting with energy. Well, we will have to figure it out later. For now, the chakra I gave you should let you move faster, hit harder, heal and generally be more durable. Naruto said before turning to Diana and asking. Now which way did Darkseid go? And where is the rest of the team? Darkseid lost because of the same reason all gods I've fought over the long years lose. Arrogance. He was stronger, more powerful, crueler and the one on the offensive. He shouldn't have lost, not when his punches could erase continents if he wished. No, he toyed with us, and we used that to our advantage, striking a blow that he would never forget. It was the day when ants felled a giant. Naruto Uzumaki about Darkseid during the invasion. Remnants of Metropolis Harbor, Metropolis. I must commend you for your survival, mortal. Most simply turn to ashes after getting hit by my Omega beams, and even fewer come back for more after surviving. Tell me, what is your name? Darkseid asked the blonde human before, who had once again shown up to fight him, and this time all alone. The new god did not say it, and he would have rather died than admit it, but he felt a smidgen of respect for the mortal. Not only had he somehow regenerated from a rather thorough attempt by Darkseid at incinerating him, he had actually come back stronger. The human eyed him warily but without true fear. It was clear that he respected the threat that Darkseid represented, yet was obviously also unwilling to back down from this fight. It was an impressive disposition for a mortal to have, perhaps even something he would have considered an admirable quality, if not for the fact it was also very annoying. Darkseid didn't have time to deal with human trash, he needed to find his daughter quickly. Grail's mother, the Amazon assassin Marina Black, had trained her well, and she had become quite skilled at hiding her presence from him. It wouldn't stop him from finding her, of course. He was the master of the Omega effect, and he shared a unique bond with Grail, who had inherited it. It was simply impossible for either of them to not instinctively be aware of each other's presences when in the same universe, let alone on the same planet. The only problem was actually pinpointing her location now that they were on the same world. All Darkseid had was a general sense that she was on the planet. Finding her exact position was something he and his forces had to do manually. Darkseid knew he would have felt it if Grail fled off-world, and that was the only reason he was even willing to indulge this brave but foolish mortal's attempts to draw his attention. My name is Sage. The young one quickly responded, before immediately shifting into a combat stance. It was as clear an invitation as any for them to begin their battle. Apparently this sage wasn't one to banter like most of the champions on the other Earths he had visited. Furthermore, after their previous scuffle, Darkseid had come to acknowledge the mortal's martial combat skills. It was for these reasons alone that Darkseid decided to take things slightly more seriously than last time. After all, Sage was stronger than before and had already proven himself to be a tricky opponent. Very well, let us begin. Darkseid acknowledged, in a tone that might have been mistaken for resignation. A single motion of his hands and all his remaining parademons resumed their harvesting duties with orders to ignore this battle and not interfere unless he commanded it. The monstrous creatures immediately obeyed, flying off to round up humans. For a tense few seconds, neither of them moved so much as inch as they sized each other up. Sage in his favored fighting stance, Frog Kata, and Darkseid with his arms folded behind his back, a distance of less than 20 meters between them. Then the new god exploded into action. Responding to his will, the Omega effect in his very soul immediately pooled behind his eyes, letting them brighten to a blinding luminosity before being unleashed. His crimson Omega beams ready to give this so-called sage another lesson in the art of agony. Had anyone else been there and been paying attention to his face, they would have noted the evil smile Darkseid now bore. The response from the human was instant. Sage burst into motion with his impressive speed for a mortal without access to the speedforce, hoping to get in close before he was incinerated again. Unfortunately, he was only fast for a human. Darkseid easily tracked his progress with his vision, his eyes flashing 6 times as they unleashed 12 hellish beams of his deadly Omega effect. All 12 of the Omega beams easily locking onto Sage and striking independently of each other from different angles. It was a simple but efficient tactic, an omnidirectional attack that struck down his target at close to the speed of light in a pincer maneuver. The attack was utterly unavoidable and one that had served him well against other versions of the Justice League. Not even the other iterations of the Amazon Princess, who were all notoriously skilled at deflecting attacks with their divine bracelets, were been able to walk away unscathed from it. That each beam was powerful enough to hurt fully powered Kryptonians and other gods meant that most beings could not even hope to take it head-on. However, Darkseid quickly learned that Sage was not most beings. Sage stopped on a dime as the Omega beams surrounded him. His form lit up in golden flame-like energy even as a pitch-black sphere suddenly appeared in his outstretched right hand, while 8 more of the spheres materialized and floated lazily behind his back in a perfect circle. Strange markings also began to cover the mortal, particularly Sage's right arm, giving of both a feeling of familiarity and the unknown. As soon as he saw them, Darkseid had an intensely bad feeling about those spheres. He recognized them as not being normal, as well as something a human should not possess. These feelings were proven correct almost immediately when the sphere in Sage's hand shifted into a battle staff as dark as the abyss, which the blonde then twirled around himself at blinding speeds. The staff spun like a buzzsaw, only at speeds that were easily approaching that of light itself. Then at just the right moment, as if knowing exactly what angles the Omega beams would converge at, Sage used the edges of the staff to intercept all 12 Omega beams. The Darkseid, as he watched it happen in slow motion, it was as if Sage was simply guiding his staff to where it needed to be before the beams even hit, making their unpredictable random movements pointless. Did have some kind of precognition. Even more shocking was the fact that normally when his Omega beams hit something, they either exploded or completely incinerated whatever they touched, unless he willed them to perform other exotic tasks. The only exceptions to this, as far as he was aware, were artifacts and weapons imbued with powerful magical or divinity. The bracelets worn by the Amazon warrior women used for deflecting attacks away from them were one good example, divine artifacts made from Athena's Aegis shield. The trident granted to the Atlantean king was another, made by Hephaestus's forge and gifted to the first king of Atlantis by Poseidon in the distant past. What Darkseid was witnessed happening at that moment, however, was neither incineration, explosion nor a form of deflection. Instead, it was like his Omega beams were simply erased from existence upon making contact with that black weapon. To be more precise, it was like they were absorbed or sucked out of reality upon making contact with the pitch-black sphere-turned-staff. His Omega beams were gone, as if sucked into a black hole, and his connection to them vanished. Whatever they were, those spheres were far from normal, and he made a mental note to avoid them at all cost. Despite the strange turn of events, the staff clearly had a limit as to how much it could absorb. Darkseid could clearly see the white vein-like patterns that appeared along the length of the battle staff, like cracks and fractures in an old wall. They had only appeared after it finished absorbing all the Omega beams, so rightly assumed that the black weapon could only contain a limited amount of power. It was still an impressive feat considering they absorbed his power. All these observations and thoughts flashed through Darkseid's mind in picoseconds and were tossed aside as Sage barely finished absorbing the Omega beams before spinning on his heel and throwing the battle staff at Darkseid like a javelin. Rather than batting the clearly unstable weapon aside or shooting it down with his Omega beams, Darkseid, with a thought and a small hand gesture, stopped the projectile in midair. It was rare for him to use his telekinesis in battle, but he was glad he did because in the next instant the battle staff exploded with blinding white energy. Likely a combination of the unprocessed remnants of his Omega effect and Sage's strange life force-based energy. The explosion had been bright enough to temporarily blind him and was barely over, with his vision still recovering from the improvised attack, when Sage struck. The young warrior blitzed through the dust cloud from the explosion, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye. Still recovering, Darkseid didn't even have time to fire another Omega beam, so he focused his power into left hand, making it glow brilliant crimson with the Omega effect and then an ethereal white before he punched where he sensed Sage to be. Boom. The air crackled with thunder, dust and arcs of lightning. Heat and overpressure scattering and pulping everything in his vicinity. Even the very ground beneath his feet shimmered like glass as it was flash incinerated and turned to lava. Everything else was simply destroy, everything but Sage. The stubborn human appeared completely unharmed, his right arm, which had strange black flame-like markings scrawled all across it, was easily holding back Darkseid's punch, much to the new god's shock. What? That's impossible. The tyrant couldn't help but whisper, truly baffled for once at what he was witnessing. True, he still wasn't taking this fight as seriously as he could have, but regardless of that fact, his last punch was killing move. Darkseid already felt like his pride was stained by the fact that Sage had somehow survived getting blasted by his Omega beams for nearly 10 minutes, it was something he could not tolerate. So he had intended to rectify that failure all at once by killing him where he stood, with that last punch. Only instead of vaporizing or even hurting Sage with a blow, his left arm felt strangely weak. That's impossible. He heard Darkseid whisper in shock. Well, it was a whisper for Darkseid, but to Naruto's ears, it sounded like a bellow. That said, he didn't completely disagree. Simply catching Darkseid's punch was something he had done on instinct when the Lord of Apocalypse correctly deduced his plan of attack and countered with a lethal blow of his own at speeds Naruto had no hope of dodging. Naruto had really just panicked in that moment and reached out to catch the punch. To his surprise, instead of his entire arm being turned to pulp, he actually stopped Darkseid's attack in its tracks. Naruto knew he was strong, but he certainly wasn't that strong. Furthermore, he could feel himself getting stronger as he held the god's arm at bay. It was only by a small amount, but it was still very obvious to his senses that he was somehow absorbing Darkseid's power and increasing his own in the process. All in all, it was a mere drop in the bucket when compared to the oceans Darkseid still had for his reserves, but it made his job easier. After meeting up with the others, they had come up with a simple plan. Their primary object was to keep Darkseid busy until Batman got back to Earth with Superman. Of course, if they could somehow kill the new god, then they were to do everything in their power to fulfill that goal. Unfortunately, the whole team knew that it was highly unlikely any of them would be able to kill the Apokoliptan tyrant. So the next best thing, as per Batman's suggestion, was to simply blind Darkseid using Aquaman's trident and Wonder Woman's sword. Those were the only weapons Darkseid had actively avoided up until now, so it was logical to conclude that they could harm him somehow. In hindsight, it was almost obvious that blinding the god was the strategy they should have employed from the very beginning. Since he had appeared, Darkseid had clearly shown that he favored using his Omega Beams above all other abilities whenever he attacked. The fact that his Omega Beam could lock onto a target and pursue them independently of his actions, as well as avoid obstacles by making sharp corners around them, made the attack ludicrously dangerous. Throw in the fact that they had enough power to harm a Kryptonian, and it simply became critical that they blind him as soon as possible. Darkseid's Omega Beams were simply too dangerous for any of them to continue this fight without taking them from him. Only Naruto, Wonder Woman and Flash really stood a chance at avoiding or deflecting the powerful eye beams of doom as Green Lantern called them, so Naruto had volunteered to face Darkseid alone as a distraction. He only needed to keep the new god's attention long enough for the others to catch him in a surprise attack, but they had to wait for the perfect moment or it could really end badly. The right hook came like a bolt of lightning from seemingly out of nowhere, shocking Naruto out of his thoughts. Had he stayed in the same position, he would have had every bone in his body around the point of impact shattered in an instant. It was by a hair's breadth that he escaped when replaced himself with a log via the replacement technique. Sawdust and splinters sprinkled the air around the place he just stood in, while Naruto reappeared a dozen meters away from Darkseid. That's what I get for daydreaming during a fight, he thought in self-admonishment. Leaping backwards and into the air, Naruto drew a flying thunder god kunai with his left hand, while in his right he formed a lava release. Rasen Shuriken. Wrapping the kunai in lightning, Naruto threw it at Darkseid's face, to which the god mockingly tilted his head just enough to let it shoot past him, a mistake Darkseid would soon regret. Naruto reared his arm back to throw the Rasen Shuriken at Darkseid, but the god's eyes flared to life and fired a blast of his Omega Beam straight at Naruto, who still had his hand extended behind him. It was clear he intended to detonate Rasen Shuriken while it was still in Naruto's hand, but his actions were already too late. At that exact moment, a clone hidden behind some nearby debris to observe the fight teleported to the kunai that was buried in the ground behind Darkseid. The Lord of Apocalypse had no chance to even react to the second Naruto as soon as he appeared before the clone stepped forward and placed its hand on his back, and then time became meaningless. From Naruto's perception, in which time and the world around him slowed to an almost standstill, the Omega Beams were mere centimeters from his face and, all but ready to vaporize him again. That was when he muttered. Flying Thunder God. Round robin. The world shifted violently, twisting in a way that was unnatural before Darkseid found that he had somehow switched places with the original sage. His own Omega Beams were mere inches from his face, and before he could even attempt to react to this, the clone of Sage behind him which had teleported along with him suddenly exploded. The explosion itself was utterly ineffective, he didn't even feel it. The only problem was that original Sage had been in mid-air when they switched places, so Darkseid now found himself in the air, and the transition was too sudden for him to activate his power of flight before the explosion occurred. The end result of this was that, while the exploding clone had not harmed him in any way, it still pushed him forward and straight into the Omega Beams, preventing him from reacting at all. Darkseid quickly found himself regretting overloading his Omega Beams with enough power to wreck a moon, as he was literally blasted away at supersonic speeds, to painful effect. And to add insult to injury, Sage slammed the ball of revolving lava-like energy right into his back, sending him flying enough into the distance where it detonated with enough power to erase entire mountain ranges. Darkseid's body was flung far from the city they had been fighting in, and he came crashing down in forest-like area, forming a massive crater. He was barely on his feet before Sage was upon him again. The human warrior's right hand turned pitch black, while glowing golden white flames surrounded it, which he drove in a vicious hook into Darkseid's cheek, making the god stumble backwards. The sheer impact of the blow igniting the forest and every living creature within it. That had hurt. How had this mortal hurt me? Darkseid wondered in shock. He knew Superman could hurt him, seeing as the Man of Steel had strength that nearly rivaled his own world-breaking power. Wonder Woman and her weapons were empowered by the gods of Earth, who though living within the third dimension, were still gods, and thus she could do something similar. Even the Speedforce conduit and the Green Lantern Corporation member could under some very unlikely circumstances have hurt him, simply due to wielding two of the primordial forces of the universe. But this mortal, this sage. How had he hurt me? This bears investigation. Nature was on fire around him, and Naruto felt a pit of regret well up in his stomach for his actions. It couldn't be helped, he was a sage, and he could literally sense the animals and trees dying around him after hitting Darkseid as hard as he just had. His connection to nature made it impossible for him to ignore it, but he couldn't afford to hold back anymore. Not even for a second, especially now that they were clear of the city. Please bear with it a little longer. Darkseid intends to destroy the world, I can't afford to hold back against him. He thought out, in a manner akin to a prayer to nature. He didn't expect an answer though. Then let us help. He knew not from where the words came, and he no time to dwell on it because he was immediately hit with retaliatory uppercut, hard enough to shoot straight into the stratosphere by Darkseid. His vision exploded in pinpricks and stars as he fought desperately, not to black out, and almost religious ignored the pain of his aching jaw. The last thing he had seen was a look on the new god's face that clearly said he was done playing around, and judging by how high up they were, Darkseid clearly meant it. It was only for a second, but he still blacked out as he flew upwards. Thankfully he woke up right away. His jaw ached from Darkseid's attack, clearly fractured, but his regeneration was already taking care of it. All in all, it was a miracle his head was still attached to his body after that uppercut. Looking down towards where his sensory powers told him Darkseid was in pursuit of him, Naruto flipped over to face the god and prepared to activate his flight powers in order to slow himself to a stop, but then he heard it again. Let us help. This time there was a nudge, an offering of some kind of power, as something waited for him to accept. With all the craziness of his life recently, Naruto did not even hesitate to accept the offer with the simple thought of, fine. He needed all the help he could get after all, and wasn't thinking too hard about where this new power was coming from, mostly because it didn't feel evil to his senses. What he didn't expect however, was for his upwards motion to instantly stop and to find himself floating in place as his body was enveloped in a field of strange energy. It wasn't anything he was familiar with, and yet, it was unquestionably nature energy of some sort. In his mind a name popped up, the White. Naruto didn't dwell on this because Darkseid, who was hot in pursuit, suddenly fired half a dozen Omega beams at him. In response, Naruto intended to use his remaining truth-seeking balls to absorb the blasts. So far each had been shown to be able to take up to 12 individual I-beams before they were dangerous, overloaded and exploded. However, it all proved unnecessary. At speeds that were very blatantly physics-defying, dark clouds rapidly gathered in the air above him before multiple lightning bolts suddenly shot down at unnaturally fast speeds and struck down at each of the Omega beams, as if predicting their paths. But the most harmful attacks out of the way, Naruto actively called upon the power of the storm while raising his right arm above him. A bolt of pure white plasma flashed across the sky and struck his raised hand, where he mixed it with his chakra and formed a lightning release. Rasen Shuriken. Naruto then merely thought about attacking Darkseid, and whatever the White was, the energy acted intuitively to his thoughts, accelerating him straight down at the god on a clear attack vector before either of them could fully react to the other. Darkseid raised his hands to grab at Naruto's neck before the ninja could slam the attack into his face, but another bolt of lightning slammed into the god's eyes, momentarily blinding him. It was an opportunity Naruto did not waste as he flew around the outstretched arm and slammed the new kind of Rasen Shuriken into Darkseid's unguarded chest, blasting him straight downwards into the ocean below. However, Darkseid wasn't a being that was felt so easily. Darkseid felt rage begin to boil in his pitch-black soul as the mortal, known as Sage, began to give him trouble. Sage was rapidly shifting from a mere curiosity, thanks to his presence and unique powers, to an irritation that needed to be stamped out. Defeating the mortal was easy enough, the gap between Sage and Darkseid's own power was like the difference between heaven and earth. The problem was that the actual earth seemed to want to weigh in on this private battle. The Apokoliptan new god was more than familiar with elementals due to encountering them on other earths. He already had special individuals designed to deal with them. Which was why he knew perfectly well what a wielder of the White was capable. This brat was inexperienced, and he clearly wasn't channeling as much of the power of the sky as his counterpart on other Earths had shown themselves to be capable of. But that did not change the fact that Sage had spontaneously gained access to this power, nor the fact that even before that the human had somehow stopped a full power punch from Darkseid, literally weakening the god and sapping his divinity. There were many other powers he had shown before that, tricks that while all impressive were generated by the blonde's own life force powers. Those last two powers, however, were different, one was not yet understood by Darkseid, and the other came from nature itself, in order to help the hero called Sage. He supposed it was fitting considering the hero's name. Despite falling towards the sea below, Darkseid smirked when the sky above lit up in a crimson explosion. One of the Omega beams he had fired earlier had looped around Sage and struck the blonde annoyance in the back while he was distracted with his own attack against Darkseid. The mortal was blasted down towards the murky ocean waters where he quickly joined Darkseid. If the white was giving the blonde its energy, then forcing him into the water would naturally take away the power offered to him by the sky. So it was with a smile then Darkseid swam toward Sage at speeds that would cause global tsunamis and kill any nearby fish for hundreds of leagues before planting his fist in the hero's stomach. A smile that would not last long. Naruto doubled over in agonizing pain as Darkseid appeared out of nowhere and punched him in the torso. He could feel his bones shattering throughout his chest cavity even as his intestines were pulped and his lungs collapsed. The second blow to the right cheek knocked out one of his incisor and fractured his jaw before a third shattered his nose and cheekbones, leaking his lifeblood into the ocean. What pissed him off most as he shot backwards through the murky waters was that Darkseid had the temerity to pluck up his tooth, which floated freely in the ocean water after it was knocked out of his mouth, keeping it as a souvenir or something. For a moment Naruto literally found himself seeing red as unbridled rage filled his being. It was animalistic, the type of rage you expect from a cornered, desperate and badly wounded beast with nowhere to run. So enraged was he that he did not even note the small amount of pressure filling his mouth as his missing incisor was quickly replaced, nor how the cartilage in his nose promptly fixed itself faster than it ever had in the past, even with Kurama's help. He did however note the rest of his shattered bones begin to repair themselves. It was like his natural regeneration was turned up to 11, all damage done by Darkseid's brief assault rapidly repairing itself. A red mystical glow surrounded the wounded areas before regenerating them. Naruto was so shocked by this that he snapped out of his rage and promptly realized that he wasn't choking on the water he had been forced to inhale. He already knew he could hold his breath for incredible amounts of time, to the point that he didn't really need to breathe whenever he entered uninhabitable environments. His chakra took over, suspending the respiration process while directly supplying him with the energy he needed to survive. However, this was clearly something different. When you inhaled water into your lungs, it was only natural to choke and try and cough it out. Yet he wasn't choking, nor had he stopped breathing, in fact it was the complete opposite, he could breathe just fine underwater. Not only that, Naruto felt himself getting even stronger, the very water was giving him strength somehow, he quickly realized. A calming blue field of energy appearing his mind's eye and joining the animalistic red, the thunderous white, the earthy brown and the vibrant green. Each color seemed to be battling each other for dominance, with blue currently taking center stage. Meanwhile his chakra and the overly abundant purple-themed natural energy here on Earth that Madame Xanadu had called magic tried to wrestle these other forces into some semblance of balance. In the heat of battle, Naruto hadn't even noticed he had absorbed so much of the different nature energies. With all this natural energy out of balance, it was a miracle he could even use 6-path Sage mode, and Naruto really didn't have time to focus on balancing his internal energies either, or his growing migraine, not with Darkseid right in front of him. The aforementioned tyrant who had simply stopped his assault to observe him in clear fascination as he healed, decided to finally speak up despite being underwater. "Is that all you have, human?" he asked. Darkseid's very words created a shockwave of power that physically pushed the water away from them for over a mile in every direction. Naruto was quickly forced to activate the flight ability that came with the white, or he would have risked falling to the bedrock of the ocean itself after the water parted around him and Darkseid. The words "were a challenge" had used "were a challenge." Naruto knew the evil god was merely baiting him to see if he had any more surprises for him. Naruto had thousands, but most were still ineffective against the deity. However, these new powers were covering for his weaknesses whenever his own natural powers fell short, and more importantly Darkseid was still weakening. He doubted the new god even realized it yet due to the sheer amount of power he had at his disposal that or his arrogance, but he was weakening so long as he remained in Naruto's presence. "Keep it up, you bastard. The longer you delay this, the easier it will be for the others," Naruto thought silently with grimace before charging in for another attack. Apocalypse, Desid's lab. The paradamant hives on Earth were ill-equipped to reprocess his flesh, but what pleasure it's been to cut it again and again. said Apocalypse chief scientist and torturer in pure glee as he manipulated the interface for one of his machines, resulting in scalp-like blades made of hellish red light, begin stabbing and dissecting pieces of the Kryptonian's flesh over and over again. Steppenwolf understood what his colleague was feeling, as new gods, it rubbed them the wrong way that a being like Superman could even exist. A mortal whose power exceeded all of theirs, with the exception of Apocalypse Lord and Master Darkseid. They completely despised Superman for this simple fact, and if it were up to him, Steppenwolf would simply have had the Kryptonian killed. Unfortunately their lord had decided to turn him into a weapon to be used in the coming war against Earth 2. A Superman to fight another Superman, Darkseid's idea of joke. Though he didn't like it, Steppenwolf was a loyal servant of Darkseid, thus he felt it prudent to remind his colleague of their duty and the rules Darkseid had laid down long ago. Do not acknowledge pleasure, Desed, it is forbidden. The Kryptonian was not brought here for you. He was brought here to become a new breed of soldier, one who will prove vital in the search for the daughter of Darkseid and the fall of the other Earth. Desed grimaced for a moment at the reminder of the ancient law of pleasure being forbidden on Apocalypse. Darkseid hated it when anyone showed any form of joy on Apocalypse, laughter was instant grounds for execution via Omega beams. With sigh Desed replied. Our master will not stop until she is found, Steppenwolf. Then neither shall we. All hail Darkseid. Apocalypse General spoke, reaffirming his loyalty while thinking about his master's almost frantic search for his daughter. He knew better than to think it was out of love or devotion, but Darkseid was very obviously obsessed with finding his wayward child. And it was their duty to see that their lord succeeded. All hail Darkseid. Desed responded in agreement. Suddenly Steppenwolf's battle instincts flared to life, and with an impressively swift response, he raised his massive electro-axe into the air and skillfully deflected multiple flying knives meant to assassinate him and Desed. Shocked and enraged that someone dared try assassinate him, the Apocalypse military general, Steppenwolf barely had time to look up in the direction of his assailant before they disappeared. The assassins who was crouching upside down on ceiling of the lab vanished from sight the moment Steppenwolf looked at him, disappearing in flicker of golden light. Then before the general could even process what he had witnessed and call for a search team to capture the assassin, the killer reappeared right next to him, already in the middle of an attack. A ball of golden energy had bloomed in the assassin's hand as he screamed. Rasengan. And the next thing Steppenwolf knew, the ball of energy was being slammed into his unprotected side. Steppenwolf found himself blasted through a computer terminal and then through a nearby wall as the energy attack detonated. By the time he tumbled to a stop, his armor was ruined, with a gaping hole in his side, meanwhile his whole body was protesting in agony from the violent assault on his person. Still, like a good soldier he rolled to his feet and prepared to fight, crouching low with his axe at the ready. He didn't have to wait too long either. Steppenwolf barely managed to bring his weapon in front of him in time to block a knee to the face with the flat side of his axe. The impact forcing him to take a step back, where he spun on his heel and retaliated with a vicious horizontal swing to behead the fool that had attacked him. Unfortunately the assassin was very nimble and ducked under the blow, and then sidestepped to follow up a diagonal slash, meant to cleave him from his right shoulder to his left hip. To call the assassin fast was an understatement, worse yet he was flexible and acrobatic, flowing around Steppenwolf's attacks like water. Steppenwolf had to begrudgingly give him or her his respect. Then things began to turn for the worst as a barehanded punch to the gut forced the air out of his lungs and had him doubling over in pain. An elbow right afterwards slammed into his jaw, knocking a tooth loose while he was bent over. Steppenwolf retaliated with a mule kick to the chest that was calmly sidestepped before the assassin swept his remaining foot out from under him. Steppenwolf quickly found himself the victim of gravity as he crashed into the ground, back first. It was the perfect opportunity for the assassin to go in for the kill or at least cause more damage to Steppenwolf's being. Not that the Apokoliptan general had any intention of making it easy for the assassin. Instead the assassin backed off, as if intending to prolong the fight. Steppenwolf found himself feeling suspicious of this, but he was also a military general and unwilling to look a gift horse in the mouth. If the assassin wanted to prolong things and risk Steppenwolf receiving reinforcements, then the general was more than happy to play along. Someone would hear the racket this fight was causing soon and come to investigate. Getting back to his feet with his electro-axe in hand, Steppenwolf took a moment to memorize the assassin's features. He, for the assassin was definitely male, looked familiar. Clearly a human, based off of the primitive garb that their kind called clothes and well built. He had blonde hair, blue eyes, whisker-like marks on each cheek and a solid figure. Suddenly a memory of the latest recordings that he had been shown of the invasion on Earth sprung to mind and he recalled where he had seen this creature. This was one of the defenders of Earth that had been fighting against Darkseid. It explained why his attacks and strength was so high for a human. Pushing all other thoughts save those of the battle before him to the side, Steppenwolf charged with a roar before raising his axe high and swinging down. The assassin sidestepped and snapped a kick into Steppenwolf's side, but the general luckily blocked it with his forearm. Unfortunately, there was enough force behind the blow to send him skidding on his feet sideways. Steppenwolf had barely stopped his backwards movement before the assassin was on him. It was out of pure reflexes that he swung his axe at the assassin's neck. Unfortunately, to his amazement and horror, the assassin caught the handle of the blade and held it perfectly still, before saying in a tone of mockery, "It seems you are not quite up to Darkseid's level of power. He's pretty strong, you're a poor joke." When the kick came, there was no way to block, and Steppenwolf found his body blasted backwards, where he bounced and rolled across the harsh Apokoliptan terrain before coming to a stop. Everything hurt, and though it wasn't quite as bad as the few times he had had the misfortune of being disciplined by Darkseid or bearing the brunt of Kalbak's wrath, the pain of having his ribs shattered was still pretty agonizing. So much so that he had even let go of his trusted electro axe, which was resting firmly in the hands of the assassin, who after following him, now stood a few meters away, clearly waiting for Steppenwolf to get back on his feet. Finally, after rising to his feet, Steppenwolf asked in a wary voice, "Who are you, assassin?" This seemed to get a smirk out of his blonde assailant, who replied while twirling the massive axe in his hands, as if it was as light as a feather. "Wrong question. What you should really be asking is whether you can get past me before my friends finish tearing the answers we want out of you, buddy with the messed up face back there." "Dezid?" Steppenwolf cried in realization this assassin was merely toying with him in order to draw more attention to their battle and give his allies more time to extract valuable information from his fellow new god. His companion would be even more helpless against opponents of this caliber, seeing as Dezid was not a soldier. Steppenwolf knew he had to do something, but he had no idea what, and the assassin had already taken his favorite weapon from him. Something must have shown on his face, for the human who had previously looked almost angelic suddenly gave a positively devilish smirk as he said, "That's the look of panic I want. Now come here, little god, I want the world to hear you scream." It was going to be a very bad day for both Steppenwolf and Dezid. Several hundred miles off the coast of Metropolis, Naruto felt the bones in his right arm crumble and his muscles turn into mush as he blocked Darkseid's punch after failing to properly dodge. There wasn't much he could do to avoid it after Darkseid managed to pin him at the bottom of the sea floor. However, despite the pain, he didn't worry about his injuries. This was not the first or second time Darkseid had all but pulverized a section of his body. The animalistic power of the strange red energy accelerated his regenerative healing, weaving bone, flesh and blood back together in microseconds. Unknown to him, there was a lot more that the energy field known as the Red could do, but Naruto was subconsciously using it to accelerate the repair of his body at a rate almost as fast as it was being torn apart thanks to the sheer brutality of the fight. Not to mention that, while his back was literally pressed against the seabed, he was simultaneously channeling energy from the melt, another aspect of Earth's nature energy tied specifically to land, making his body tougher than diamond. It was all subconscious, just like how with the clear blue, he had been able to breathe underwater and manipulate the water in order to swim through it quickly, or to use the white in order to fly and call down the lightning at will. And though he had yet to use the green, he instinctively knew that it could at the very least accelerate the growth plants. But so many different forms of energy flowing into his body, it was a workout in and of itself for him to balance it all with his own vast chakra reserves. Unfortunately, up to this point Naruto hadn't succeeded at all, and as a result Darkseid had given him a thrashing. His body was barely keeping up with the speed at which the new god had been tearing him apart. Playtime was long since over, and Darkseid was actively trying to kill him. The Red worked overtime to keep him alive, but blood, teeth, bone fragments and bits of flesh filled the deep ocean waters as Naruto did his best to dodge, parry and block his way through the new god's assault. Punches thundered even under the water, scattering tens of thousands of cubic meters of ocean water in shockwaves before it returned to cover them again in its crushing depths. Naruto painfully endured it all, focusing solely on weakening the self-proclaimed god of evil, while keeping Darkseid in the midst of his fury from noticing the drain on his divine power. And then it happened. Perhaps it was one punch too many to the noggin, perhaps Naruto simply gave in to the infamous Uzumaki temper that had been stoked by the animalistic rage of the Red, or perhaps he simply stopped trying to balance and control all the different forms energy his body now housed. It might have even been something as simple as his desire to simply protect his newfound friends, or the fault of the divine energy he had been leeching from the god, like an oversized vampiric parasite. In the end, Naruto himself had no idea what triggered it, all he remembered was the moment when all the pieces came crashing together. A sinking feeling in the depths of his gut as all the energies within him, including everything he had absorbed from Darkseid, threatened to crush his very soul and drag him over the precipice. Instead, at that moment when he felt all was lost, it all just clicked into place like the clockwork of a sophisticated timepiece, and something new was born within him. The world seemed to grow deathly still, waiting in anticipation of what was about to occur as time seemed to all but stop. Then the water surrounding his form exploded off of him with enough force to free himself of Darkseid, his power lashing out with the brilliance and violence of a new star being born, forcing everything in a 5-kilometer radius to simply evaporate, save for Darkseid. Above the god and godkiller's head a truly colossal lightning storm began to form, and beneath their feet a new sea was birthed, one made of molten lava. It was an oddly picturesque scene, as Darkseid and Naruto hovered in the air face to face, a literal wall of ocean water rushing in towards them to fill the void Naruto had created as his powers took on a new form. Skyfire flashed above, and the boiling itcher of the planet bubbled below, the incoming waves churned, and gale force winds roared their reply, yet the two divine beings said nothing. For just a moment there was peace between the two, but it would not meant to last, this was just the eye of the storm after all. Darkseid raised his hand, literally at the speed of light, to intercept the punch when the fight suddenly resumed. The force of impact so overwhelming that he was actually forced back, and the lava-like seabed below them exploded into an enormously deep crater. Before the god could retaliate, Naruto delivered a kick to his chin using hard fist jutsu techniques Mido Guy himself had drilled into him with the help of Rock Lee during the war. Darkseid shot up into the atmosphere with Naruto hot on his heels. Naruto's arms moved in a series of extremely precise rapid-fire punches as he unleashed Guy-sensei's favored morning peacock technique, or rather, he utilized the principle behind it to make something new and even more devastating in this situation. Morning peacock, daytime tiger and evening elephant all had the same underlying principle, in that the techniques were basically just a punch. A super fast, super precise punch. Morning Peacock was a series of punches at low hypersonic speeds that ignited the atmosphere, generating and accelerating balls of plasma at a target in the form of fireballs. What made it crazy was the fact that it was just a bunch of very precise punches, without any chakra in them. Daytime Tiger was an even faster punch, but instead of igniting the air in fireballs, it was a wide area attack that somehow displaced a massive amount of air and crushed the enemy, with pure pressure exerted on everything in its area of effect. The Evening Elephant was simply a super refined version of Daytime Tiger, focusing and concentrating all that displaced air and pressure on a very narrow target area, again without igniting the atmosphere. Mido Guy had demonstrated all three techniques during the war and explained the theory behind the first two to him in detail from his wheelchair during Naruto's training against Madara. Naruto had never mastered these techniques, not like Rock Lee who was being trained to inherit all of Mido Guy's knowledge, but then he had never really had to. Naruto already had physical strength that was a match for the Juubi Jinchuriki, and his speed exceeded anything the 8 gates could grant him aside from if he used the Gate of Death, and even then Naruto was faster. No, it was the sheer precision and mastery of the taijutsu techniques themselves which Guy passed on to him, allowing him to use the full potential of his speed, strength and durability. That said, Naruto had still picked up things here and there, and he was well known for using his creativity to apply them in his battle strategies. Something he did right here. Drawing power from the thunderstorm and the sky around them. Naruto let the blue-white lightning from the energy field that was the white coated his arms with its luminous brilliance as he threw the first punch. The lightning shooting forth like a giant lance, reminding Naruto of Sasuke's Chidori spear in many ways, only much bigger and thicker as it struck with a deafening thunderclap. His left arm repeated the punch motion, accelerating and guiding the exotic nature energy of the white towards his target once more. Then he did it again and again and again and again until hundreds of spears of lightning slammed into Darkseid repeatedly. Darkseid didn't just take it lying down however, the new god's arms lit up with the Omega effect as he used his power to swat aside the assault on his person. His eyes lightening up with crimson fury as he fired a full-powered blast at Naruto that would have killed any new god with ease. Fully intending to finish Naruto there and then. Once again to his shock and utter disbelief, Naruto did the unpredictable and quite frankly impossible. Stopping his lightning-style version of Morning Peacock, the former Jinchuriki raised his right arm, with the yang symbol on his palm glowing as it faced the incoming attack. Despite the random pattern in which Omega beams attacked, they completely failed to curve around Naruto's outstretched palm and were absorbed directly into the Godkiller mark, much to Darkseid's chagrin. Worse yet, the attack did absolutely nothing to Naruto. Well, that was not true. It did do something, it just didn't kill him like Darkseid had intended. Instinctively he felt the additional power coursing through his veins. Naruto knew that this was what his body and his powers were pushing him towards ever since he began absorbing all these different energies and trying to mix them with Six-Path Sage mode. No doubt they were part of the modifications his boss had made to his physique. He could literally feel the slot that represented the next stage of his Six-Path Sage mode powers and he eagerly reached for it. Naruto's whole form morphed as his skin darkened to a heavy tan, while his golden locks and eyes turned a pure glowing white. His 6 paths age mode chakra cloak inverted, the gold of his chakra cloak turning pitch black, and the black sealing symbols all across it, turning a burnished gold. The 6 magatama on his collar each gained a distinct colors: red, green, white, blue, brown and purple. The first 5 representing the red, the green, the white, the clear blue and the melt, while the last color represented magic. All the while an aura white transparent flame surrounded his being. By that overachieving glorious blonde bastard. I knew he was something special, but damn if he's trying his level best to make a liar out of me. He shouldn't be able to push Darkseid this hard, but I can't ignore what I am seeing. The entity that had brought Naruto to this universe and named itself his boss yelled in disbelief at the sudden change events, an amused grin on its face as it watched the fight. With snap of its fingers, a couch, a bucket of popcorn and a coke appeared in its hands as it settled down to watch the fight more closely, and for the first time ever, it ignored its duties to the multiverse. Darkseid shot forward clearly unwilling to let this sudden transformation finish, his punch slamming into Naruto with enough force to shoot him into the core of the planet. Instead Naruto instinctively used the replacement technique, leaving his truth-seeking balls with a non-existent log. Before Darkseid could react, all 9 of the truth-seeking balls transformed into tailed beastras and shurikens and collectively detonated with explosive forces in the Petaton range. The force of the explosion threw Darkseid high into the sky and directly at Naruto, who was waiting with a devastating punch just as the god shot by. The blow shot Darkseid straight back down and deep into the bedrock of the ocean, which was followed by another punch as Naruto immediately pursued him, digging him deeper into the ground. Hundreds of more punches rained down on Darkseid, physically forcing him through the planet's crust and into the mantle, before arriving in the liquid outer core. Darkseid however turned the tables with only one punch that shot Naruto in different direction, right out of the Earth's internal structure. Nature was on the ninja's side it seemed, because despite being blown through the outer core of the planet's depths, he wasn't crushed by it. In fact he could feel the liquid core parting around him gently and guiding him back to the surface, while attempting to crush Darkseid. This unfortunately did not even slow down the angry god as he tried to kill the ninja. Naruto re-emerged from the depths of the planet somewhere near Australia, bursting through the ocean floor and then the water's surface in a majestic spray, before shooting straight up into the sky. In seconds he was above the mesosphere, where he quickly spun around to look down and await his enemy. He had something special for Darkseid. Gathering his chakra and concentrating it together between the palms of his hands, not in the form of a tailed beast ball, but something even more powerful. He had seen Hagoromo, Madara, Obito and Kaguya all use them in different ways, each a piece of the puzzle, and he had the exact same power, so he knew he could do it. But this was the first time he was actually attempting it, the creation of Truth-Seeking Ball. A new pitch-black sphere formed in between his hands, taking a colossal amount of chakra just to form one, after having lost his original 9. However, this was not meant to be any ordinary truth-seeking ball, no, he was also channeling magic, the blue, the green, the red, the white and the melt into it. Already the ball shifted from its traditional black color to a pure white. With an exertion of his will upon the newly formed truth-seeking ball, it shifted its form into a blade that had once been wielded by the sage of the 6 paths himself. Naruto admired the familiar double helix pattern of the Nunaboku no Ken as it formed in his hands. The sword that was said to have been used to reshape his world in the past, and a desperate last gambit by Naruto to weaken Darkseid enough to finish his mission. Unfortunately he could not do that with the sword as it currently was, for it was merely the length of a normal katana. It needed to be bigger, stronger, more destructive and more like its counterpart in legend. As Naruto thought of these things, Darkseid appeared in his sensory range, closing the distance between them in the blink of an eye, but the blink of an eye was far too slow for the god to stop Naruto's retaliation, especially with the planet itself doing everything in its power to slow him down. By the time the chief god of Apocalypse realized what was happening, it was already far too late for him. Naruto raised the blade above his head and with a mighty roar of exertion, swung it down at Darkseid. The pure white blade began extending its length mid-swing as all the chakra, magic and other forms of exotic energy matter in the blade came crashing down into the wide-eyed god's chest with life-annihilating force before exploding. Had Naruto not already flown into the planet's exosphere, this gambit might have damaged mesosphere and left billions at the mercy of meteors and solar radiation. It was only through the guidance of nature that Naruto knew exactly where to be when he struck such a mighty blow, and what a blow it was. For a few seconds a new star was born, visible to almost everyone in the eastern hemisphere of the planet, as white light blotted out the brilliance of Sol itself. Naruto however was not done yet, despite being blinded and deafened from the explosion of his own attack, he flew towards Darkseid using only his sensory abilities. This was the team's best chance against the new god, and he was already growing too exhausted to keep up this level of combat. He could already feel his enhanced six-path sage mode slipping from his grasp as his hair and eyes turned back to gold, his skin lightened to its normal peach, and his cloak reverted back to its normal form. Grabbing Darkseid by the shoulder, Naruto teleported them to a flying thunder god marker in Metropolis, where they crashed into ground in an undignified heap. Both of them getting to their feet almost as soon as they hit the ground, Naruto maneuvering behind Darkseid and grabbing his massive right arm before he could react, then twisting it behind his back. The ninja deliberately hyper-extended the god's arm to the point that a human would scream in agony and wouldn't have enough leverage to remove him. Darkseid merely grunted at his efforts, while Naruto froze his arm in place with Shukaku's curse marks, empowered by what was left of his enhanced six-path yang chakra. Even with all Naruto had done so far, this was only enough to lower the Darkseid's strength to the point that even when the new god was serious, it was no longer an overwhelmingly one-sided battle. But that was exactly the point. Darkseid was finally disoriented and wounded enough from getting hit and blown up by the Nunaboku no Ken that it gave the heroes the chance they had been waiting for to turn the war around just as planned. The new god was in the process of reaching out with his free left arm to remove Naruto and break the restraint seal the ninja had placed on him when Diana's lasso of truth ensnared the limb and pulled it to the side. Several clones nearby immediately joined her, combing their strength to keep hold of the lasso as the god tried to thrash around. Other clones activated a sealing array beneath Darkseid's feet that kept him pinned in place. Then before Darkseid could try to break any of this with brute force, a massive clamp made from emerald energy appeared, clamping around Darkseid's body and keep him in place, courtesy of Green Lantern. With Darkseid fully restrained, there was a sudden thunder-like crack as the sound barrier shattered several times over. The Flash appeared in a blur of speed, even to Naruto's eyes, with Mera and Aquaman in tow, as he used his speed to carry them towards the immobilized form of Darkseid. Then with a yell of exertion, the speedster physically threw the two Atlanteans directly at Darkseid before he could even think incinerate them with his Omega beams. The two Atlanteans, with perfect synchronization, simultaneously stabbed Darkseid in each of his eyes. Aquaman with his seven-pointed trident and Mera with Wonderwoman's sword, completely blinding the god and taking his most devastating weapon out of play just before his eyes began pool with the Omega effect energies in preparation to unleash the Omega beams. Darkseid's roar of agony actually brought a sigh of relief to Naruto. They had succeeded at their mission, completing their objective to blind the new god. Naruto could barely believe how much he had done and put up with in order to get Darkseid to this exact moment. Turning to his teammates, he teased. "It's about time you slackers came to my rescue. I can't be expected to tame this monster on my own, now can I?" There was no disguising the happiness in his tone at seeing them again. The plan had been simple, but he had severely underestimated how hard it would be to execute it. Flashback. "How are you even alive?" Green Lantern asked, shocked at the sight of Naruto standing there healthy and completely whole. Turning to his buddy the Flash, the space cop repeated the question. "How the hell is this guy even alive, let alone walking berry?" Darkseid literally cooked his goose. For a moment the Scarlet Speedster tried to come up with a scientific explanation before simply shrugging and saying, no clue." They had all seen Naruto laying on the ground, dead or near enough that it didn't really matter, and yet here he was standing before them completely healed. The ninja in question merely smirked when everyone except Mera and Diana turned to him with a questioning look. Shrugging he said, "I guess I got really good regeneration." Though it was pretty obvious that no one really bought his excuse, nevertheless they dropped the matter. Rising off of a piece of debris that he had been sitting, Aquaman pushed his way past the Flash and said, "Forget about that. What I want to know is how Mera is even walking around. The last time I saw her right leg shared a resemblance with a barnacle." Mera scowled at his less than flattering description of her formerly wounded limb before replying in an icy tone. "It was Naruto's doing, and I would thank you not to compare any part of my body to barnacles or anything else in the sea from now on, King Orin." Aquaman nodded sadly, the frigidity in her tone making it clear that just because she had been willing to die for him did not mean things were okay between them. Even so, Naruto sensed a gratefulness radiated from the king for the fact that Mera was no longer hurt. Gratefulness that was specifically being directed towards himself, even if it remained unspoken. Redirecting everyone's attention to the matter at hand, Naruto said. "Okay, how about we focus on Darkseid for a moment? I heard Batman has gone to get Superman back with a couple of my clones, so until they get back, we need to keep that evil bastard busy. But how exactly are we supposed to do that? We already tried everything we knew, and it did nothing." Green Lantern asked. "It's not going to be easy, Lantern. Our coordination with each other is poor, battlefield awareness less than stellar, and our communication skills with each other are non-existent. These are all weaknesses Darkseid can and has exploited. During our last assault on him, we got in each other's way far too often, and on top of that Darkseid is stronger and more durable than any of us." Naruto replied, before framing his chin with his index finger and thumb. None of this is something we can really fix, our team is far too new for us to do so in just a few hours. The only thing we can do to mitigate this weakness is to follow a plan and hope for the best. No plan survives contact with the enemy. Victor said, having learned that from playing American football. Naruto nodded and said. True. Which is why this will be a very flexible plan. Do you have something in mind? Diana asked. Nodding, he replied. We can start by having Flash keep a lookout for us. If anyone seems to be in trouble, he can get in and get them out before Darkseid has a chance to drop them. Like that. Naruto snapped his fingers for emphasis before turning to the speedster and adding. That is of course if you are up for it. Flash stepped forward and said. I've always been better at saving people than fighting anyway. Good, and I can help teach you to fight after we survive this. Naruto said with a smile before continuing. With you as a safety net, things will be easier for the rest of us. That said, we first have to weaken him before you engage him in close combat, and for that I will need to bring the fireworks. You will need to be standing clear of me and Darkseid when I start rearranging the geographical landscape. Does that mean? Green Lantern asked with a grin. Mirroring it, Naruto replied. Yes. I am back up to full power now, I can use my chakra freely again, and that allows me to do a lot more than I have previously shown, including this. Naruto said as he flared his chakra to life and entered Six Path Sage mode. Now bump fists with me, so I can gift you with my greatest weapon. A grin spreading across his face as he extended his hands to his teammates. For all of 3 seconds the guys in the team hesitated before Wonder Woman giggled in amusement and said. The so-called courage of men finally shows its true nature. Both Mara and I went through this process unharmed and without fear. I think the Greek warrior princess just called us chickens. Flash said in exasperation before stepping forward and raising his own fist to give Naruto a fist bump. Aquaman immediately followed, raising his own fist to bump Naruto's left fist at the same time as the Flash, his pride having been slightly wounded by Wonder Woman's comment. Meanwhile, behind them Victor Stone and Green Lantern silently watched. None of the guys really expected much to happen, and so were caught off guard when golden orange chakra exploded from out of the speedster and King of Atlantis, immediately wrapping around their forms in a transparent chakra cloak. What is this? Aquaman asked in awe of the power coursing through his body. He could feel the range of his power over the sea increase by several orders of magnitude, even without his trident as a focus. The oceans felt like they were all his to command at will. Naruto smirked and replied. That is my chakra, the source of my power, and for those of you who weren't here for the explanation earlier, the simple and short version of the story is that it's weaponized life force. Truthfully, it's far more complicated than just that, it's an energy field generated by life that straddles the line between science and mysticism. Not that any of that is important right now, all you need to know is that I can use it to enhance you, and possibly your own powers. He's right. The Flash exclaimed in awe. The Speedforce grants me enhanced regeneration, heightened perception and reflexes, durability and above all speed, but I've never been this powerful. It's like my whole body has been modified to be able to use more of the Speedforce. Well, don't get too attached to the chakra cloak, it's a temporary upgrade at best, and by tomorrow it will have cleared your system unless it unlocks something already inside of you. Naruto said, remembering how Diana's lightning powers had been unlocked. He also believed that something had been altered within Mara, but so far she had shown no sign of it all. Well, that explains why I feel like I can currently juggle mountains. As an Atlantean of royal blood, I am stronger than the average Atlantean by a lot, but certainly not as strong. And the ocean. Aquaman said while flexing his fingers, even as his eyes held a faint glow and he looked towards the ocean. Mara snapped her head towards the King of Atlantis at his odd comment, asking. What about the ocean? I can sense all the life within the ocean, in every ocean on the planet, all at the same time. The king said, sounding genuinely dazed. When everyone looked at Naruto in shock, he simply nodded and said. My chakra will heal you, increase your strength and durability, as well as act like a force field around you. However, it primarily augments what you already have in you. In a ninja, that would be their chakra techniques, but in all of you it seems that it boosts your natural powers instead. Everyone nodded at the explanation, as Flash said. This will definitely give us an edge against Darkseid. Turning to Victor Stone, Naruto asked. What about you, aren't you going to try it? I'm a cyborg. Victor responded with shrug. If your chakra is life energy or whatever, how will it even work with me? I am mostly made of metal anyway. Who knows, but you might as well give it a try and see what happens. Naruto said, offering his hand in a fist bump gesture. The human side of Victor's face frowned at the reply for a moment before he eventually relented and simply said. Fine. While extending his fist. The moment his fist made contact with Naruto's, he felt a rush of energy unlike any he had ever known, flood his body, both the artificial and organic parts, and then a computerized voice spoke up in his mind. Unidentified energy detected. Processing. 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 Upgrade available. Do you want to make modifications to existing firmware? This was alarming. Victor had already gone through one major change to his body when he became a cyborg that very night. That another change to his physical form was presented to him mere hours after he had learned to control his cybernetic body was not something he was particularly keen on accepting. However, something told Victor in his metaphorical gut, having already lost his real one, that if he didn't take this chance, then he would regret it later. So he spoke the words he felt came most naturally to him in that moment and said, "Yes." Acknowledged. Upgrade in progress. Upgrade complete. Victor Stone couldn't help but note that when the computerized voice said upgrade complete, the physical changes occurring to his body were only just beginning. First, his armor seemed to bulk up in mass as it painfully began separating itself from the majority of his organic body. For a long, terrifying moment, Victor was left fearing that the process might actually kill him, his heart rate spiking and his breathing becoming labored in response. Then came the glow, the unmistakable golden energy Naruto had called chakra, as it swirled into place over his grievous injuries and, to Victor's shock, began to regrow the damaged parts. This was helped along by a metallic slurry of nanites that joined together over his missing limbs and formed a skeletal structure for his missing arms and legs. More nanites then poured over the rest of his skeletal system, covering the rest of his bones in a thin layer of the same strange metal his armor was made from, making them virtually unbreakable. Through a few of the remaining connections between his brain and his armor, Victor had the schematics for the upgrade downloaded straight into his mind. He would have read about it too if it wasn't simply more fascinating to watch a simulation of exactly what was happening. His flesh regrew at an accelerated rate thanks to Naruto's chakra, covering his metal bones in a Terminator-like fashion. Blood, vessels, nerves and muscles, interwoven with bundles of synthetic muscle-like fibers that stored emergency nanite reserves. A small anomaly in his spine drew his attention, a small marble-sized shell appearing, hardened to impossible densities. Within it, a quantum neural brain was being formed, with hundreds of fine microcilia attaching it to the spinal cord and increasing his mental processing power 1,000-fold. New replacement organs were quickly regrown, a mix of flesh and hilariously advanced technology to replace what was missing and make him stronger. Then, when all this was complete, his outer armor turned into a liquid silver slurry which sank through the pores of his skin and disappeared into his body. Only several quadrillion clatronic atoms, like nanites but smaller, were left on the surface of his skin as a thin layer of protection. Somehow several tons of his bulk were completely absorbed by his body, while leaving him with the weight of an average human his size and build. Even his hair and skin on the metal half of his head, along with his left eye, were regrown, as the metal and old eye lens were broken down into nanites and absorbed into his skin. A new eye quickly replacing his missing left eye, which had been sacrificed during the process which converted him into a cyborg. It was now a mix of cybernetic and organic, taking the best of both worlds. This was evident by the fact that it was still colored red. All in all, he looked pretty human, with the only reminder of his cyborg nature being his red left eye and silver veins, containing untold numbers of nanites beneath his skin. A black and silver body glove had been grown by the nanites during the upgrade over most of his naked form to maintain his dignity. After a moment of observing the change, Naruto snorted in amusement and said, "Okay, not what I expected, but it works. I'm human." Victor muttered in shock, patting down his body and clutching at his healed face, as if afraid it would disappear. Placing a hand on the young man's shoulder to steady him, Naruto said reassuringly, "You were always human, Victor, you just became a bit more. Though, I have to wonder about all that metal you were carrying. It turned all liquid and stuff and then just disappeared. Inside you was left unsaid." But still, that was as far as Victor got before, with a subconscious thought, he brought all the nanites out again. His armor reforming around him in a liquid slurry of metal before solidifying. However, it looked different now, his form was smaller and sleeker than before. It truly looked like he was wearing powered armor rather than it being grafted to his being. It also shifted around him like a liquid, based on whatever his requirements were at that moment. Think Iron Man Endo Sim armor from the comics. It seems you can switch between forms at will now. Aquaman pointed out, sounding impressed. It seems I can. Victor agreed hesitantly, while Naruto merely clapped him on the back, stepped past him towards Green Lantern, who had been suspiciously quiet for a while now. "What about you, Lantern? Don't you want to go? Who knows what my power might knock loose?" The ninja said, offering a fist bump, but the Coast City superhero shook his head in refusal. "I will pass." The Lantern replied with sigh. Naruto could sense longing and disappointment coming from him even as he said this. Surprised by his reply, Flash asked his friend, Why? I mean, look at what he did for us. I want to, but believe it or not, my ring really doesn't like the color of his chakra, and if he tried to give me some of his power, it would throw a hissy fit and stop working properly. There is no point in trading one power for another, and without the ring, I don't really have anything special for him to augment. So I will just stick to what I know. Green Lantern insisted. Not wanting to force the matter, Naruto changed topics and said. Okay, with that settled, let's get back to business. Darkseid is toying with us, and I want to use that to our advantage. We need to blind him. Without his eyes he can't shoot his Omega beams, which seem to be his favorite method of attack so far. Diana and I have already shown we can stop the shockwaves he makes when his arms start glowing. So we all need to focus on taking out his eyes. How do you propose we do that? If he sees us coming, he will incinerate us. Green Lantern asked. I will distract him for a bit and hit him with everything I can throw at him. The second he appears disoriented, I will teleport him here. Naruto said while throwing a flying thunder god kunai on the ground and continuing. Where, the rest of you will blindside him and hopefully actually blind him. I will hold him still long enough for Diana to bind him with her lasso and hold him down with the aid of a few clones. At best we will be able to buy you a few seconds, so you need to be ready to strike the instant me and Darkseid appear. Just a few seconds? Mera asked in disbelief. Naruto merely shrugged, as if to say nothing more I can do, then replied. A few seconds is all we really need, especially if Flash can do what I need him to do. And what's that? The speedster inquired. I need you to carry both Aquaman and Mera over to Darkseid, faster than he can react, and fast enough for them to stab him in the eyes during the seconds we will buy you. You're going to need to be able to get in there before he realizes the danger and vaporizes all three of you. Naruto explained before turning to Wonder Woman and adding. Also, for this to work I would appreciate it if you would lend Mera your sword, Wonder Woman. We need to take out both eyes at the same time. I would have asked you to be the one to stab Darkseid yourself, but quite frankly I need your strength to help hold him down. I don't mind. The beautiful raven-haired princess replied with a smile before drawing her weapon and handing it pommel first to Mera while saying. I presume you are well acquainted with the blade Mera of Zebel. Mera took the offered weapon before taking a few practice swings to test the weight and balance of the weapon. Smirking in satisfaction she replied to the Amazon princess. Indeed I am, and must say that this is a magnificent blade, Diana of Themyscira. However, not much knowledge is required to simply stab someone in the eye, even if that someone is a god. True. Wonder Woman agreed with a nod. Clapping his hands together Naruto said. Great. Mera and Aquaman, pick out which eyeballs you are going stab. After that work with Flash so that he can practice carrying both of you and how you will approach Darkseid when the time comes. With the speed boost I gave him, he should have plenty of time to line up his angle of approach so that you can do what's needed. That man said that Darkseid had been going out of his way to dodge Diana's sword and Aquaman's trident. It's time to put that theory to the test. Now, I don't know what state I will be in when I finally teleport him here, but I promise you I will get him here. Just be ready to do your parts, and if we succeed here, we will be one step closer to victory. So any questions? What about the remaining parademons? Green Lantern asked. Green Lantern, take out as many as you can, but do not leave this area, our primary objective is blinding Darkseid. Flash looked horrified at suggestion, even as he said. But they will spread out. I know, and I hate it. Naruto said harshly, cutting of the Flash before he could begin a rant about heroics. But this is war and we can't save everybody, so we have to prioritize saving the most people. If we do not stop him now, Darkseid will remain unchecked and I can't stop him without you guys. This might be our best and only chance to end this war. Thousands will be abducted to Apocalypse. Flash. You mean tens of thousands? If I hadn't died. Naruto's voice faltered slightly as he said those words, but he continued. My clones would still be around to keep the parademons in check. But I did, and with Darkseid here, I can't make more and risk weakening myself against a hostile god who is stronger than Superman. Think about it logically instead of idealistically, Flash. If you were to zip off right and save as many people as you can, do you really think you could put a dent in the number of people being abducted? Most of the parademons can fly and you can't. Even if we joined you and targeted every parademon on the planet in an all-out assault, Darkseid would still be free to do as he pleases, and I doubt he would just stand by and watch. We've all seen for yourself that he can kill us. I was lucky to come back, one of you might not be. Flash scowled at Naruto, with genuine anger directed at the ninja, as he said. You're asking me to turn my back on the innocent people I have sworn to use my powers to protect. Grabbing the speedster by the shoulders Naruto replied. I am asking you to look at the bigger picture and save the world by targeting a threat to all life rather than the threats to several thousand lives. I know it seems cruel and heartless, but this is not an easy choice even for me. I wouldn't wish the burden of such a decision on anyone's shoulders, but we are at war, and war is hell. No one gets to walk away from it innocent. Flash seemed to vibrate in fury, but he did not dash off. Finally with sigh, he said. Let's just get this over with. For what it's worth, Flash, I've been in your shoes. When I was 17 I was caught up in a war, and one day the enemy used his power to wipe out an entire battalion. One of my commanding officers chose to save me over countless others because my powers just happened to be necessary for ending the war. I watched over 15,000 of my brothers and sister die that day, and all I could do was ask myself why me instead of them. I never did understand the choice that commander had to make, prioritizing me over so many other lives. He said sadly while turning away from the speedster, before adding. That is until today, right here, where I am faced with that exact same choice. We can't stop Darkseid without you, and if he isn't stopped this invasion doesn't end. There was a tension in the atmosphere as everyone processed what Naruto had just said and what he asking them to do. To let a few humans be sacrificed in order to stop or at least cripple the global threat that was Darkseid. It went against every fiber of each of their beings, their heroic natures wrestling with the very idea, but they all understood that stopping a few parademons instead of crippling Darkseid would be an even greater betrayal of their oaths to protect humanity. I think I speak for all us when I say, we will do what needs to be done. Green Lantern said, after a moment. The others quietly nodding in confirmation. Naruto sighed in relief as he said. Good. Be ready, once we blind him, if I have anything left in the tank I will send clones after the parademons. Flashback end. The Flash, with his usual swift efficiency, plucked both weapons from Darkseid's ruined eyes before the new god could even react in pain and returned them to their owners, while Naruto backed away from the thrashing deity. It was a gruesome sight to behold. Naruto almost felt pity for the bastard, if not for the fact that he invaded Earth caused so much death already. A sword and a trident in both his eyeballs, and he's still standing. What else can we do? Green Lantern said with a grimace as his construct shattered under the might of the thrashing and now blind new god. We can try and send him home. Victor Stone suggested as he fired a concentrated blast of his white noise cannon at Darkseid while simultaneously raking the sky with his shoulder-mounted plasma turrets of any parademons rushing to aid their master. This suggestion caught everyone's attention and Mara asked him. How can we do that? She too was raking up a kill count as spears and swords of hard water shot into the sky like rainfall in reverse and utterly slaughtered anything caught in their path. Those cubes they've been using to form portals are basically supercomputers. They call them boxes, and I just need to speak their language. Victor responded while ducking under Darkseid, and the god swung his fist in the cyborg's general direction and then backing away. The Zebellian princess's confusion was noted by his processors and ignored in favor of tracking a flight of parademons coming from the south via Waynetic satellite uplink. Which is what exactly? Lantern asked as he crashed several fighter jet constructs into Darkseid form to no real effect. Victor Stone shrugged and replied. Ping or whatever. The three watched as Naruto jumped and delivered a spinning hook kick to Darkseid's face, knocking him over sideways in a setup for Wonderwoman to try and impale him through the neck. Darkseid somehow sensed what was about to happen and grabbed the sword his bare hands before, punching the Amazon away. The blade still drew blood, which was in everyone's opinion progress. But the grunt of exertion Cyborg focused on the Mother box which was still integrated with his body and responsible for keeping most of his armored mass stored away in a micro-dimension. He then focused on all the other Mother boxes in the city and around the world. Once connected he forced hundreds of boom tubes to suddenly open, not just in Metropolis but across the planet. Most of them quickly began sucking any nearby parademons into them, as if they were trapped in a gravity well, leaving the Earth clear of their presence. One even opened up behind Darkseid to ferry him back to his homeworld, yet despite being blinded and attacked by numerous heroes, he completely resisted the gravitational pull of the portal. Kid, whatever you're doing keep it up. Green Lantern said with an excited grin as he noted what few parademon were around, getting sucked up by the portals. I can't do this for very long. I can see Batman, Superman and thousands of civilians who were taken. They saved them, and they are coming through one of the portals on the outskirts of Metropolis. Victor said with excitement tinging his own voice at the fact that the tide was finally turning. Turning to Naruto who had leaped back from one of Darkseid's attacks, he said. Sage, Batman needs your clones to help on the other side of the portal. He has civilians coming through a portal on the edge of the city, and while I managed to get rid of all parademons on Earth, I am sure you understand where I sent them. Roger that. Naruto replied blocking a backhand that sent him flying backwards, all the while crossing his fingers and yelling. Diana, take over for a minute. Mass shadow clone technique. Hundreds of clones phased into reality around him. It was a paltry sum compared to what he could normally do, but Naruto was exhausted at this point. Without a word they all blurred towards the portal that had humans coming through it. Apocalypse, remnants of Desid's labs. The Naruto clone smiled as he held the spoils of his victory against Steppenwolf. The new god's own war axe, along with his severed hand still attached to it. The new god had only escaped death when he fell through a portal, much to the clone's annoyance. Steppenwolf was nowhere near Darkseid's level of power and durability, so he was far easier to handle, despite Naruto being a mere clone. Their battle was decided by pure skill alone, and in the end, Naruto proved himself to be significantly more skilled at close combat than the god. Unfortunately, it seemed that Desid had also escaped through portal while his other clones were using a few aggressive interrogation techniques that the original Naruto had picked up from Anko back in the day. Darkseid's chief scientist hadn't really given them anything useful before he escaped, but he would definitely be feeling the effects of the interrogation when he woke up in the morning. Technically this means I have fought against 4 gods now. Man, my life is weird. The clone thought to himself before turning towards where Batman was directing thousands of civilians through a portal that had opened up to Earth nearby. Superman was off with 2 of the less chakra-exhausted clones to rescue civilians and demolish the facilities responsible for making new parademons. Those clones would dispel after using their attacks, and their chakra and memories would pass on to him, after which he would head through the portal. The intelligence they had all gathered needed to be returned to the original Naruto at once, provided he was even alive. But he has to be or I wouldn't be here. Frowning as the parademons which had been forcefully returned to Apocalypse suddenly began to gather in order to charge the escaping humans, the clone prepared to intervene. Thankfully it wasn't necessary as about 100 fresh clones suddenly shot through a nearby portal and immediately began engaging the parademons. One of them, spotting him, ran up to him and said, "You're one of the ones that came here with Batman." "Yeah. We rescued Superman and he's been helping rescue the civilians," the old Naruto clone replied. "With a nod, the new clone said, "I see. But he is needed by the others on Earth. The original used up most of his remaining reserves to create us in order to relieve and help with protecting the civilians. We need to get in contact with Superman." There was sound like thunder as the air rippled and cracked, to which the older clone said, "No need. I think he heard you. Right, super hearing." The younger clone then looked at the war axe and the arm still attached to it before saying, "I take it you had some fun." "Meh, for a god. The guy who owned this axe wasn't that tough," the older clone said with shrug before picking up the weapon and limb, then sealing it away in a scroll. "I better get this back to the original on Earth. I am sure you guys will enjoy blowing chunks of this shitty planet up." Of course, Darkseid's invasion wrecked lots of cities on Earth. "It's only fair," the younger clone replied with a grin. Superman shot through the portal like a bullet to find Darkseid with his boot on a weakened Naruto's chest after managing to tag the exhausted ninja. The blind god was in the midst of fending of the other heroes who were attacking when the god-like alien slammed into Darkseid, freeing Naruto. Though he could not see, Darkseid retaliated with a punch, but Superman caught it and stopped it cold, matching and exceeding the new god's weakened strength. Darkseid immediately tried with his other hand, and Superman caught that too before pushing, blatantly overpowering Darkseid, who tried to dig his feet in and resist the Man of Steel. Within seconds, Darkseid was forced to his knees. Meanwhile, Superman's eyes lit up with solar fury and he deliberately began cauterizing the new god's eyes, further damaging them. "Brag." Superman ignored his screams of pain and backhanded Darkseid away, sending him flying through the smoking remnants of several buildings, Metropolis's new Troy district. Speeding past the god as he was in mid-flight, Superman punched him right back the way he came, where he slammed in the midst of the heroes after making several more holes in the ruined buildings of the Kryptonians' home city. Darkseid rose to his feet quickly, sensing he was surrounded, and moved to punch the nearest person, Green Lantern. However, Superman was there in an instant and caught Darkseid's punch, holding the god's hand in place, while Wonder Woman's lasso wrapped around Darkseid's neck, pulling him in the opposite direction. This had the effect of fully extending Darkseid's right arm out until it was completely straight. At which point Sage suddenly jumped and dropkicked Darkseid in his elbow joint, dislocating the limb with a sickening pop. "Briah." Darkseid's cry of agony went completely ignored as Diana released him while drawing her sword and slitting his Achilles tendon equivalent, making him stumble to one knee, only to get punched to the floor by Superman. Climbing above him, Superman delivered 2 mighty punches that nearly sank New Troy into the ocean due to the force behind them, before blasting Darkseid directly in the face with his heat vision again, much to the god's agony. He then grabbed Darkseid's foot and threw him at open portal, hopping to get rid of him. Yet somehow, Darkseid, even with only one arm fully functional, blinded and hamstring, he managed to catch the edge of the portal and prevent himself from fully being sucked in. Thankfully, Sage had the perfect going away present in mind. "Damn persistent bastard." The ninja cursed while visibly gathering energy in his that formed a myriad of colors and yelling, "Victor, get ready to shut the door in his face." But that Naruto simply thrust his hand forward, the ball of energy accelerated, morphing into what looked to Kal-El like the double helix of a DNA strand, except with a sword's pommel at the end. The double helix-shaped sword turned pitch black even as it left Naruto's hand, then to a brilliant white as it extended forward and slammed into Darkseid's chest, with the force of a moon crashing into a planet. The blonde ninja would later explain to the Kryptonian that what he witnessed was a blade that was said to have been used to reshape the world by his ancestor Hagoromo Otsutsuki. Only this time it was imbued with the raw natural energies of this earth. Unleashing a volatile mix in that moment of magic, the clear, the melt, the green, the blue, the red, along with much more directly into Darkseid's chest, and in the process dislodging the god's grip from the edge of the portal. Then a panicking Naruto yelled. Victor shut the door. For a second, the world turned pure white. The resulting explosion of power from the collision would have reduced the entire state and many more of the surrounding states to a wasteland if the boom tube hadn't automatically sealed shut as soon Darkseid fell inside, conveniently containing the explosion within another reality and protecting them all. Even then Superman could hear reality itself shudder. The job was done, they had won, and Naruto was so exhausted at that point that he didn't even notice himself falling onto his back. For all the barrenness of the rock beneath his body, it might as well have been the presidential suite at the best 5-star hotel in the world with the softest, most relaxing bed. He wouldn't have noticed. Taking a deep breath as he simply looked at the fading stars in the sky above, the light of dawn already tinging at pink on the horizon. Naruto began to laugh as he thought. It was over, it was truly over. It began as a mere giggle, but quickly turned into a deep belly laugh as he held his sides and let out everything in a genuine heartfelt laugh of relief at the ridiculous situation he had just survived. Never in his life had he imagined he would ever fight two different gods and live to talk about it. Okay, he had died both times, but the point was he was still here. His laugh was pretty infectious because within seconds the others started to join him, all of them except Batman of course, who had just joined from rescuing civilians. Still the Gothamites smiled at the scene, despite no one really saying anything, they all understood what was happening here. They had won the war, a war that had seemed impossible to win, against a god that had seemed impossible to defeat. The situation seemed so ridiculous, and yet they had done it and without any casualties on their team, casualties that stayed dead anyway. Even the Terran gods of old had not succeeded in defeating Darkseid thousands of years ago, and had only managed to stall him until New Genesis intervened. Admittedly, Darkseid hadn't attacked with the full military might of Apocalypse for some reason, but this was still a very impressive achievement on their part. Suddenly there was applause and rounds of cheers coming from thousands of civilians who had been rescued from Apocalypse. They had followed Batman towards the group heroes, and while Metropolis was a wreck, it was clearly over. Above them small fleets of helicopters and fighter jets flew, having rushed towards Metropolis as soon as the parademons disappeared everywhere. Hurriedly rising to his feet, Naruto said. I'm gonna sleep for a week after this. Amen to that, brother. Green Lantern responded from where he was floating, looking just as happy at their victory as everyone else. A new age of heroes had dawned on the world that day, one that was about to change everything. So this part ends here. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, so quickly like this video for second part of this series. And comment down below your thoughts about this series. And now it's time for me to go, bye.